Larson behind the glass, producing the program today, booking the program today. It is game week. Congratulations. You made it. You've been waiting all year for this week, and we're very excited here on the station as your home of the Utes to bring you coverage of Utah UCLA coming up on Saturday. Kick will be at 9 o'clock. Don't forget to listen to the pregame show with Porter. Porter will take care of it all year long. Then, of course, Bill Riley, Scott Mitchell, Stevenson, Sylvester, friends of the show, friends of the station. We'll have you taken care of on game day as the University of Utah will be at the Rose Bowl taking on UCLA. This line has remained very steady. Utah opened up about a touchdown favorite. That's kind of where it stayed. The Utes are a 6.5-point favorite as of now, heading on the road to take on the UCLA Bruins, who, even by their own broadcasters' opinion, have a ton of question marks and a lot of unknowns. Not a lot of people very high on UCLA this year. Obviously, it's a new offensive coordinator, it's a new quarterback, and it's a new-ish coach, as Deshaun Foster's only been on the job for a couple of years. But week 0 in the books for college football, not the best showcase for the Big 12 across the pond in Dublin, Ireland, but Iowa State was able to pull off the upset, 24-21, and Matt Campbell with some uncharacteristic aggressive play calling that is not necessarily his calling card, but Iowa State off to a good start. If I was either one of these coaches, I would have been pretty upset about what I had to deal with. First of all, just going overseas to open the season, playing a conference game in such difficult circumstances. The field looked awful. The fans looked uninterested, and the football was just okay. I mean, it ended up being a close game, which is always fun. But you don't mistake a close game for a good game, and a lot of anti-Big 12 sentiment throughout the course of the weekend over week 0. But now we launch into a full slate of college football. Kansas looked really good against Fresno. Have no issue there. BYU's first 2 opponents, and 3 of their opponents actually played over the weekend, and none of them looked very good. Iowa State looked good. BYU will be in Ames later on this year. But Stanford went over on the rock and lost to Hawaii. And Portland State got run 42-0 by Tarleton State at home. Like, I don't know what you learn about BYU this weekend. I suppose if you're breaking in a freshman quarterback like BYU is, and by the way, like Michigan will be as well. That announcement came down a couple of hours ago. Maybe you prefer a soft landing spot. But Brigham Young, a 43.5-point favorite over Portland State and Provo. And then the Bronco-Mendenhall era will begin against UTEP coming up on Saturday as well. So Bryson Barnes back under center for Utah State. Of course, Bryson is a player we know and love down here in Salt Lake City for his time with the Utes. 33 college starts for Bryson Barnes. So it's here. Game week is here, and we're 10 days away from week 1 in the NFL. Cut day for a lot of different teams in pro football. We'll keep you up to date. Any news that comes down in our direction, but it will be Philly and Dallas opening day 10 days from today, a little Thursday night football action, so pro football is also here. As Tony Finau said after he won a tour event a couple of years ago, a loser is just a winner who keeps trying. And so Tommy Fleetwood certainly changed the narrative on his pro career over the weekend, lifting the FedEx Cup, getting paid a cool $10 million, and getting his first PGA Tour victory in historic fashion. Played really good golf over the weekend. All of his challengers, including world number 1 Scotty Scheffler, Patrick Cantlay made a little bit of a run, but ultimately this was Tommy's tournament to win, and he sealed the deal even after making a double, dumping his approach into the water. I think that was 15, but bounced back and finished strong. So congratulations to Tommy Fleetwood. RSL has picked the wrong time of year to combine bad form with bad luck, and that's what happened again over the weekend. I was at the match, and there were moments of good quality play. The Olatunji kid opened his bank account, soccer term for all of you out there, getting his first goal for RSL, but not near enough. And they get thumped 3-1 and have now lost 3 straight games. And even with a bad start to the season, this is the first time all year they've lost 3 straight matches. They're 4 points below the line, and they've got 7 matches left. Now, as a result of Seattle advancing in one of the dopey MLS tournaments, I don't know, Leagues Cup, Nations Cup, Open Cup, whatever it is, Seattle advanced. So the RSL match against Seattle has been postponed. I don't think they play again for like 3 weeks. So maybe this gives Pablo a little mini training camp to help Ruan Cruz and Victor Olatunji. And we also saw the debut of DeAndre Yedlin, friend of the show, DeAndre Yedlin. Maybe Pablo can get those guys more familiar with the system over the next couple of weeks, and they can make a run. But it doesn't look good as their playoff hopes took a big shot over the weekend with a loss here at home. Not a lot of NBA offseason stuff. We are inching closer and closer to NBA training camps, but not a lot of news as of now out of the world for the Utah Jazz or the NBA as a whole. So we're pretty college football centric as we are your home of the Utes. We're going to move a lot of our coverage, most of our coverage in the coming weeks and months into the college and pro football space. Good guest list on this Monday afternoon. Happy Monday to you. Hopefully you're off to a good start to that work week and had a fantastic weekend, and we appreciate you choosing to make us a part of your Monday afternoon. We'll start things off with Stevenson Sylvester, one of the best to ever do it at the U, linebacker, pro football player, Super Bowl winner with the Steelers. So Sly, part of our broadcast team, is going to be part of our coverage for Utah football all year long. Josh Furlong covers the Utes for KSL. Josh will stop by and talk more Ute football. The voice himself, Bill Riley, stops by. We will play you Kyle Whittingham's press conference from earlier today. If you're familiar with the program, first of all, thank you for listening. Second of all, every Monday throughout the college football season, Coach Witt addresses the media in the morning, and then we bring it back to you here on our afternoon drive show on ESPN 700. So we'll bring in Coach Witt today, let you hear what he had to say earlier today. Then Andy Larson from the Salt Lake Tribune for the latest on the Jazz and maybe a little RSL. I'm sure Andy is an RSL fan. Is feeling a little bit gutted as of now. So Stevenson Sylvester, Josh Furlong, Bill Riley, Coach Witt, Andy Larson, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, and that guy, Porter Larson, Monday afternoon. Question.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody offered to bankroll your life
Okay.
in exchange for you striving to become something, like you can't just lay around.
Mm-hmm.
You have to learn a craft. You have to take, you get the opportunity to take let's say 5 years. You get 5 years to try to become something, whatever you've always dreamed of. If somebody agrees to bankroll your life, what would you choose to be?
Ooh, that's a good question.
That question was posed to me over the weekend. My announcement, my answer, I should say, at the age of 47 will not surprise you. Champions Tour Golf.
Oh, I've thought of golf before. I really have. Man, and you're getting the bankroll.
You can.
Yeah, it's got to. Listen, I'm 30. So it's like maybe a mid-quarter life crisis thing, hopefully. Maybe I'm not going to be that old, but
you could start a band, something like that.
I think it's got to be a sport, like you said. Maybe it's golf because I'm not spry. I'm not a spry young lad anymore.
You're pretty spry, Porter.
But not maybe to try to play like a real active sport, like golf or maybe you're going after some running accolades. I don't really know.
I want you to think about that. Let's revisit it before we say goodnight.
That's a tough question.
You've got 4 hours to think about
it. Who asked you that? Are they a billionaire?
Not. I probably shouldn't say out loud.
Can I talk to them?
I don't believe it starts with a B. It might start with an M, but I probably should keep my sources private at this juncture.
And it's not.
It wasn't a hard offer. It was a question.
Okay, good. Your answer wasn't sports radio. That's why I'm asking.
No, but bankroll me so I can talk on the radio for 4 hours every day. No, I have a job doing that. This would be chasing something other than what you do for a living.
Okay.
So I would golf. I'd hire coaches. I'd hire nutritionists. I'd cater all my workouts to my golf swing that I just play golf every day.
Yeah, that guy'd probably be buying me a bunch of horses, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And then I'd probably be happy until I die.
It's a good answer. So ponder that on the program today. Our first guest right out of the gates will be Stevenson Sylvester. But before we get to Sly, on Monday afternoon, courtesy of our good friends and your good friends too at Prize Picks, it is time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
Sean O'Connell has chimed in what he would do if somebody bankrolled his life. He would just be a surfer. He would try to be a pro surfer.
Okay.
See, that's a good answer.
That is awesome.
Because if there's no, guarantee that you're ever going to I've been playing golf for 5 years. I could play golf every day for 5 more years, and I would never even touch the pros. It's not a thing. But if there's no, tie to a performance and you just want to be a beach bum, claiming that you're trying to be a pro surfer is a good answer. I like that.
Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea at all.
All right, so that's the biggest question of the day today during game week. If somebody offered to bankroll your life in exchange for you learning a craft, what would you do and why? Don't call or text. We don't read those, but I don't know. Just think about it and talk to yourself. All right. If you have not downloaded the Prize Picks app, you should do it now because here's the deal. If you download the Prize Pick app, and use the promo code ESPN700, you get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Now, you don't even have to win that lineup. They're just going to hook you up with $50. So promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, you can run your game all season long. So they're giving you what they're calling a max discount. Okay, so there was one over the weekend. If you missed out on it, it was Avery Johnson, 0.5 passing yards. K-State lost, but obviously he hit the over because that's the point of a max discount. Max discount number 2 is on the NFL side of things. Week 1, NFL 10 days away, Dak Prescott just over 0.5 yards. He has to throw for 1 yard and you win. So what I'm saying is go get the money, then dump it on the max discount, and then just see if you like it with our good friends at Prize Picks. All right, you guys have been waiting all year long. We are 5 days away. That's me getting a drink of water, making sure the voice is good. We're 5 days away from game day for Utah football and 5 days away game day for BYU. All 6 of our D1 schools are in action this weekend, and then kind of the 3 on the biggest stages that we cover mostly on this station. It's Utah, BYU, and Utah State. So, of course, the Utes hit the road to take on UCLA. Don't forget, that is a 9 o'clock kick, and it is on Fox. But, of course, the radio coverage is right here. Porter, what time will you be beginning the pregame coverage for Utah football on Saturday?
We'll be going about 5 o'clock, as you know, about 4 hours before kick. And then, you'll have game day coverage up until, midnight maybe?
Yeah, it's going to be a late night for Bill, late night for Sly and Scott, but Porter will get you taken care of starting at 5 o'clock on the station with pregame coverage of Utah football, then all year long. 4 hours prior to kick, make sure to tune in right here as Porter will take care of you during the pregame stuff. So we've been talking quite a bit on just realistic expectations, right? I'm not one to be hyperbolic with picks or over the top, just kind of picking the positive side, the homer spin all the time. I tend to be a little bit more cynical and more of a critical eye, and I just really utilize the first 3 to 4 weeks of college football as observation and not conclusion. You guys will get sick of me saying that, and you'll get sick of me kind of going with that, but I don't feel overly confident or overly pessimistic about something I'm unfamiliar with. That's the excitement about Utah football this year. That's kind of the feeling across the marketplace, and it's fun to have hope as a fan. I think there's a ton of optimism with Devin under center, and obviously the big boys up front. They continue to be like topic number 1 whenever Utah football is discussed. We talked about the historic nature of where Spencer Fano seems to find himself these days as potentially a top 5 or 10 draft pick, one of, if not the best tackle in the country, and Utah boasting one of, if not the best offensive lines in the entire country, certainly not just in the Big 12. But over the weekend, we had week 0 in college football, and we saw Iowa State and K-State go at it. And I referenced this earlier, and we'll talk to some of our guests about this. If I'm either coach, if I'm either AD, I'm pretty livid that that's how I decided to start I was told that this is how we have to start our football season. The dynamic of a game in Dublin, Ireland, like the idea of it, the principle of it, I think is an interesting option. It didn't translate on television. I don't think it accomplished what the Big 12 or ESPN or the TV partners wanted it to accomplish. The field looked awful. The fans, for the most part, looked pretty, docile, for lack of a better term. They didn't look like they were all that into it. And K-State didn't look good, and they're behind the 8 ball now. I mean, that's a game with conference implications. Game 1, you've got to travel overseas. You've got to deal with jet lag. You got to deal with the time zone change. And then you've got to deal with awful conditions in a field that just didn't look like it was ready. Like, you've got to prepare for inclement weather. You got to prepare for certain conditions. And, yes, conditions will adversely affect a lot of different fields. So I don't want to go too hard on the folks that are in charge over there. But the reason I bring it up is this observation, not conclusion. Like, there are people that are, like, out on K-State now because they took a big risk. They moved on from the Will Howard kid who went to Ohio State and won a national championship. And if we're honest, Avery Johnson, who was the favorite, the only Big 12 player to receive even decent odds to win the Heisman, I think, was Avery. During the offseason, it was certainly the area he lived in. He was the Big 12 player that was on a lot of lists. And it's been a couple years now, and I just don't really see it with the kid the way that I think a lot of people were expecting. I thought Rocco Becht was a better quarterback. And Matt Campbell with some very interesting, aggressive play calls that aren't necessarily his calling card, even though he's a really, really good coach. So Iowa State off to a good start. BYU sees Iowa State later on. They have to go to Ames. That's a back-to-back. That's actually a tough stretch for BYU. They'll have Utah at home. Then they're at Iowa State. They're at Texas Tech, and they're home against TCU. So we did get a look at a opponent for Utah and Kansas State, and I don't think they looked all that great. Certainly a couple of – and it really was a game of fourth downs, right? Iowa State able to convert a couple, one for a touchdown, and then K-State getting stopped on their call. So that's – those are two of the more consistent teams in the Big 12, and I think both of them are going to be just fine. Utah's second to last game will be K-State at home. So we got to look, of course, at them and then a couple of opponents for BYU. And if you're a BYU fan, you're looking at this non-con schedule and you're laughing. I mean, they should beat Portland State by 1,000,000. Portland State didn't even score against Tarleton State. I know they had like a field goal that bounced off the upright, but that should be an ass-kicking. BYU's a 43.5-point favorite. And then Stanford with his weird dynamic of Frank Reich on the sideline as an interim coach, but not a long-term solution. Like, the broadcast just kept showing Andrew Luck, like in a suite. Like, the football wasn't very good, so Hawaii took care of them. So if you're BYU, you're licking your chops at those first two games. Those should be easy wins. All right, so we will catch a break. We're going to continue to talk Utah football, as it is game week for us on the station, and most of the content today will be Utah, Big 12, BYU football related. Our first guest on a Monday will join us on the other side of a break. Stevenson Sylvester stops by, so don't go anywhere. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. Bryce Underwood gets the starting job for Michigan, the freshman quarterback who was originally an LSU commit. And then Michigan reportedly paid him $12 million over the course of 4 years. And it is a contract that he signed. So he is going to be the starter under center for Michigan. That came out a couple of hours ago. So another true freshman under center for a big-time P4 program. Our next guest joins us on a consistent basis to talk football. One of our favorites, Sly Stevenson Sylvester, Monday afternoon style. Sly, happy Monday, man. How we doing?
Happy Monday, man. Can I get a $12 million contract? Dang.
You know, Sly, I'm sorry that you weren't born a few years later because you certainly would have been able to, my man. So sorry about that.
I wish I could say a few years. I'm old as crap now, so and a little more than a few.
All good, man. Well, it turned out just fine for you. You had a hell of a run, and, of course, it's great to get your perspective on the current landscape and where Utah football finds himself. So Monday of game week, Sly, take us behind the scenes. What's going on up there as UCLA is 5 days away?
Well, week one is a lot different than other weeks. And so, one, you got the excitement of the campus and all your other classwork and everything that you have to get settled. So they've already dove deep into UCLA. This week is all about refining. Week one is a lot different than week 2, 3, 4, first week of conference play, all of that other stuff. So it's not as, you know, how you try to jam everything into a week. You don't have to jam it all into week one because you've been on it for at least 2.5 weeks now. Coaching staff has got you ready to go. So week one's a lot different. Monday is more of refining, and the coaches' sake is what they want to do is build that regiment for week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, and so you're not focused so much on game plan stuff that you're now able to implement more regiment stuff. How is our weekly regiment going to go? Every Monday, we're going to have our young guys lift at 6 a.m., our older guys lift in the afternoon, Tuesday, Wednesday, how all those practices and stuff is what is being implemented this week to make sure that everybody knows what's going to go on for the next 14 weeks and how we'll operate. And so this week it's a lot of excitement. You know, you're more focused on UCLA because now I get to stop hitting, you know, the red and white, the red and black. I get to stop hitting my teammates. I get to now focus more on a different colored opponent and really put, you know, all of this offseason talk to test, man, and no better spot than the Rose Bowl, legendary Rose Bowl, man. So I remember my freshman year, 2006, we opened up at the Rose Bowl, and it's a remarkable venue, man. And so really excited to see Utah fans out there, all the alumni that's going to be there. Everybody's been talking. So really excited for this week's game.
What's the most challenging part for either an incoming freshman or a transfer when it comes to the learning curve under Coach Witt, and just what, you know, the most challenging part of adjusting to playing for Coach Witt in Utah football when it comes to just getting used to what he's asked of you? What, because obviously these days, Sly, it's a different challenge. Most every team at least has 30 to 40 new players every year. Bronco has 80, which is wild to just wrap my mind around. But when it comes to new players, what's the most challenging part of helping them understand what they need to do?
I think the guys have it in their mind is like, don't be the guy, right? Don't be the guy that messes this up. Don't be the guy that sets us back. Don't be the guy that jumps off sides. Don't be the guy that puts us behind the ball. I'm new to this. I want to be ingratiated into this program. I don't want to be the guy that's setting people back, right? If I'm the new person, I don't want to be the guy that's holding the team back. So the term is don't be the guy, right? And so I think all of these new guys are coming in here. They're doing great. Everything that I've heard from the coaches, everything that I've seen from practices is that they're taking things well. They're acting like they've been here for a while. And so they've really taken ownership in the program, which is what Coach Whittingham wants. You know, his successful teams, what has he said? Player-led football teams. And so he wants you to own this team and make sure you guys take responsibility and take pride in what you put out on the football field. And so I've seen that from those guys. I know training camp is it's a grind, man. So being able to have another opponent, there's another level of excitement with all of that, man. So I'm really excited to see what these new guys do. And Coach Witt, man, this has got to be a great year for him, man. Last year was just something that we're all not used to as fans, as people who admire and have watched the University of Utah for the last 25, 30 years. That's not something that we see. And so this is going to be a huge get back year, and it starts week 1 at the Rose Bowl.
So, Nico Iamaleava, the transfer, is really the star of this team. And, we had their play-by-play voice on the station. Sean had him on a couple of hours ago. And even the voice of the Bruins has a lot of questions pretty much everywhere else. They've lost 8 of their 10 most valuable defenders, according to PFF. And, Sly, when you look at preseason expectations, not a lot of people are high on the Bruins. Utah's a 6.5-point favorite, even though it is on the road. So as you've learned a little bit more about them, what would you say as far as challenges they pose, what they do well, and generally speaking, what Utah's up against?
Well, I think Nico is the entire story, right? His whole dilemma with Tennessee in this offseason and coming over here. I know he has a younger brother now on the roster, and what UCLA had to do to give up to get him, right? There's a lot of culture things that they sacrifice, which is the dilemma with NIL and the transfer portal stuff. But he is a big name guy, 6'6", 215, can run and can throw. That's the name of the game. How athletic are you? Can you deliver with all those things? But you did see in the playoffs where, he did get rattled. He did not come through on certain things. And I assure you, Morgan Scalley is on it. That is exactly what he's going to do. He's going to fluster the heck out of Nico. He doesn't know where the pressure is going to come from. He doesn't know who's going to hit him. He's going to have many havoc plays that we're so used to. So I'm very, very excited for Utah football to get back to that. But I think their dynamic things that they possess is something that a lot of athletic teams have. And so it's actually right up our alley. So I really like that part. I just think that, we're going to have to go out there and execute at a high level. Just like any week, you have everybody has athletes, right? So it's all about who can execute the best. And so, facing this type of offense, it starts and ends with the quarterback. And so, and their running game, they have a very strong running game, from their Cal transfer in Javion Thomas. He's a very good running back. And so their offensive line, they take pride in it. Traditionally, UCLA has had these huge offensive linemen. Not that they've been strong but they just look like mammoths of human beings. And so they take pride in their running game, but especially their head coach is Deshaun Foster, a running back. So they're going to try to run the football. So that's going to be their identity, whether that's QB run game or that's, running back run game. So be able to see all of that since we don't have tape. And we're going to look back to their offensive coordinator, Tony Sunseri from Indiana, and see exactly how did they implement QB run game with their offense and how they'll do that here. But I think the biggest thing is if you shut down Nico, you give Devin Dampier the ball back and this offense the ball back. I cover high school football, and we just did Fremont versus Davis last week. And Davis went up 21-0 and had to make Fremont go one-dimensional. That's exactly what we want to do. If we will give our offense the ball back with turnovers, with havoc plays to start the game, sacks, 3 and outs, and our offense scores quickly, that puts UCLA in a bind. That's making Nico have to throw the football, which is what I want to do. I don't think he's as great of a thrower as he is a runner. So I want to make sure that he is throwing the football and not running the ball as much. And so if we expand that lead, we make him one-dimensional, we get to pin our ears back. And I'm telling you, with our roster, you're going to want to see our guys blitz. And that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to seeing Lander Barton, John O'Hall. I know John O'Hall has put on a lot of work this offseason, so I can't wait to see him unleashed with Logan Fano and Teo Johnson, Elijah Davis. A lot of these guys have put in great work, and Rabbit Evans, I think that he's since the end of last season has made the biggest progression in his play, and he's that traditional strong safety that we've known and loved from the Joe Dales, the Weddles, the Tates, the Casey Evans, all the way down to the Tevin Carters, to the Marcus Williams and Julian Blackmans. Rabbit Evans is going to be that type of a linebacker who can blitz and get into the backfield, and the versatility that they have with the nickel position, our defense is going to act like we've been playing for the last 3 months. And that's what I saw last week when I was at practice, is our defense looks clean. Everybody's running so fast. The communication is pure. There was 0 mistakes. I loved it. That was just awesome. And so, I felt like we're at that progression. And by the time Saturday hits, this team's going to be on and running. So look for those havoc plays early Saturday night.
From a player's perspective, Sly, because we talk about this in the media space all the time. BYU has Portland State, and Portland State just lost to Tarleton State at home 42-0. BYU is a 43.5-point favorite.
43. Dang.
Yeah. I mean, they're expected to beat them by 1 million. And if you can't score against Tarleton State at home, my guess is you're not going to score against BYU. From a player's perspective, what would you rather have to start the year? I don't think UCLA is a world beater, but as you referenced, you're on the road. You're at the Rose Bowl. It's on the main Fox channel. It's a little late, but, West Coast time, you're fine. A lot of people are going to be watching. So would you rather have an opponent where there's some meat on that bone, or somebody you're expected to walk over like Portland State?
That's a great question, Spence. And honestly, for me, I've answered this a lot of times, and it's all about the type of team you currently have, right? If you have an experienced team right now, then you should face a top-tier opponent. But if you got a lot of moving parts where you don't know what's what, you want to face a team like Portland State, right? And so the term in football is act like you've been there before, right? Act like you've been in the end zone before. Act like you've gotten a sack before. Act like you've gotten that pick six or interception before, right? So you're not overly excited and you waste emotion, you waste energy, right? Act like you've been there before. You're a professional. BYU now changing quarterback. You got that new starting true freshman quarterback who's supposed to be a beast. I'm really much looking forward to seeing him. You don't know exactly everything that you can present with him. And so what better than having an easier opponent that you're expected to get into the end zone, much like practice, and see how things are going against another opponent than going against a Portland State. So I think BYU is right where they're supposed to be with the opponent that they need from the situations that they have experienced this offseason. And I think Utah's right where they need to be. Our offense, I would actually rather our offense go against a Portland State. But, with the defense that we have, I think we'll be rolling. I think the coaching staff that we have will put our offense in the right position to where they'll be able to execute as if they've been together and experienced for a while. So, and I think it all depends on the type of team you have. I actually like where Utah's going right now. We're able to make a statement, and then we come home against a Cal Poly and then a Wyoming. So you get this nice P4 opponent here. You get a great big win against them, and then you really settle in here the next few weeks with home game and then a crappy away game in Laramie. Oh gosh, I'm not looking forward to that. And then you're ready to go for conference play with a big tier opponent against Texas Tech. So I love Utah's schedule, and I think BYU's schedule fits them as well.
Sly, there's something you need to know. For some reason, I don't know if he's just playing a character, if it's a bit, but Porter claims that the Wyoming game is the road trip he's most excited to take. I don't know.
I don't know. What is he talking about? I hope he's driving. I hope he drives. You know what, Porter? You drive over there. Don't take that United flight. You drive over there and sleep in the gas station. That's all you get.
Yeah, he gets a Flying J turkey sandwich as far as his meal, and that's all you need, right?
As long as it's expensed, I'm good.
Oh gosh,
I got bad news for you.
Take the flies out. Take the flies out. No protein in there.
Indeed. All right, Sly. Does it feel like, because doing some reading and some prep and kind of trying to understand the way national media members view our in-state teams, it feels like Kalani has kind of built this thing up down at BYU in a similar way that Kyle built the thing up here. Does that jive with you? Because all of the preseason previews about BYU the past couple of years, it's like, well, the defense is dialed in. We all know what type of coordinator Jay is, and obviously Jay, Kalani, and A-Rod all coached under Kyle. I don't know if it was intentional, and I guess imitation is the best form of flattery or whatever that saying is. Does it feel like Kalani's kind of built BYU in the same way Kyle built Utah?
Absolutely. I don't know how to say that. Yes, 1,000%. The whole framework down there, man. You look at that whole coaching staff, and sometimes it makes. I saw Sione Pua after the game last year, and I was just like, ew. you make me sick. And he's like, I'm sorry, man. I got to support my boy Kalani and all of this stuff. But yeah, it's the exact same team. I think that's why the head-to-head matchup is so great, is because of how similar we are. And it's like that Spider-Man meme is like, that's you, that's me, is that a mirror? That's the exact same thing that we're going through right now, even with the quarterback that they're about to have, right? That's a very similar quarterback to a David Dampier. So I'm like very excited for this matchup, and I love it because I think football is based on defense, how great your defense is. I know things have translated with the evolution of football, and offenses, make so many things go as far as betting and all this other stuff, but at the end of the day, football wins, our defense wins championships, basketball, football, soccer, whatever you want, defense wins it. If you're able to stop your opponent, that's what it is. And that's the frameworks, right? And so you got, Jay Hill down there. You got Coach Anderson, who's another defensive coordinator / head coach / game manager, helping out Jay Hill. Their defense is solid. And they got so much coaching staff to learn from. They got legacy players out the yin yang down there. They have talent, a lot of in-state talent, man. I really love how Corner Canyon went down to Florida and beat the crap out of a Florida team that was talking mess. This high school football area here in Utah is growing on a national scale that everybody should be able to pay attention to and take seriously, right? And so BYU's getting a ton of in-state talent. All the great players are going to either Utah or BYU, so we're standing tall. And what I love about Kalani, Coach Anderson, Jay Hill, A-Rod down there, and all the Utah coaching staff up here is they know how to assess talent. When I go to these youth football games and stuff like that around here, you could tell the teams where coaches know how to assess talent and put players in the best positions, and you definitely tell the coaches who can't. Right. And so I think that more often than not, Utah understands, like, yeah, this kid we recruited as a receiver, but I see him as a safety. I think he's going to be absolutely awesome. Or I see Paul Kruger. Yeah, he did a great job at quarterback, but he's going to be a defensive end. Right. Like, how do you know those things? And I think that, BYU and Utah are kings at knowing and understanding how to assess talent around these players and put guys in the best positions to succeed.
So another, I don't know if it's just a narrative that is a media creation. You do hear coaches talk about it from time to time, and A-Rod has talked about it on a couple of different occasions as far as how much of the playbook is at the quarterback's disposal right away. And then how much of that playbook do you want to implement opening day, juxtaposed to holding some of it back so your conference foes are not necessarily familiar with your style and your system. And it's a little apples and oranges here because, against Portland State, my guess is BYU is going to be up like 40 at halftime, and Bears probably going to sit the second half. At least if you're a BYU fan, you have to hope. And hopefully Utah pulls away from UCLA, but if the line is indicative of the result, it's probably going to be a little bit closer. So how much of that is real? Like, how much of the offensive playbook do you think we can expect to see for Jason and Devin game one against UCLA? And how much do you want to hold back to make sure that your approach isn't something your opponents are really familiar with right away?
Yeah, I think that's all BS. I don't ever take a coach serious when they tell the media that somebody has the playbook at their disposal, right? If the playbook is at their disposal, you don't have to disclose that. Right. It is what it is. Like, this kid knows exactly what we need to know to win. You don't have the whole playbook open every single week. If an offensive coordinator tells you my entire playbook is open for this week against Utah, they're lying. They have a certain number of plays that you're not going to run. An offensive coordinator's playbook is so deep, so vast. Why would you have it completely open? Right. Even veteran quarterbacks like Ben Roethlisberger, the whole playbook wasn't open for that week. We had an exact playbook that we were running for that week and that opponent, right? And we varied some things, but we took a lot of other plays out. You don't want everybody to be remembering every single play because there's 40 to 60 plays in a game, and if you have 250 plays, we're not running all 250 plays for 40 and 60 plays. And so there's going to be variations and things that you do, but don't take that so seriously. And plus, check this out too. I go against Portland State. I'm up 21-0, not even offensive points. I've scored defensive points. I scored special teams points. What am I trying to put on tape for my next opponent to see? Why would I want my next opponent to see everything that I have in my repertoire? So you're not going to see everything from BYU in this opening game from Portland State. It's just something to keep the narrative going and keep people guessing and talking, because it makes no logical sense to open your entire playbook against a Portland State.
Yeah, and some good points in there, and also a lot of it will be predicated on how the game is going. So on the Utah side of things, the bottom line is you want to come out with a win, period, no matter how you get it. But what do you think we'll see on the Ute side of things from the playbook? Balance between run and pass. What are you anticipating game one for Jason Beck as the OC?
You got to get confidence. Confidence first. Confidence in the quarterback. All right, okay, we're done with practices. We're done with, playing against ourselves. We need you to have confidence in playing against another jersey, because football is different than basketball. Making mistakes in football can change the entire game, right? And so we got to have some easy plays, some nice 1-2s. I think RPO game is going to be huge for Utah, because Dampier's legs are a huge threat, and you shouldn't undermine that. Don't try to force the throw, and you have somebody who is so dynamic like that, right? Do the RPO where the pass is open, but you use his legs, right? And as I said, he does a great job of throwing on the run. So you do a sprint right options. Devin Dampier should not be sitting still in the pocket. I think he has ability to, but if we're being successful and putting the best plays out there on the field, he should not be sitting still in the pocket. If he's sitting still in the pocket, it's a 1-step or 3-step drop, really quick, get the ball out, Tom Brady style, and that's it. That's the only times he should be sitting still in the pocket. If he's doing 5-step drops, I think we're messing up, right? He needs to be doing bootlegs, play actions, sprint options, with over routes, and then RPO game with the runs. And I think that's what you're going to see a lot. I think you're going to see there's been a lot of talk of our offensive line this offseason, and so we're going to see a good mix of running the football. Wayshawn Parker and Nakiri Rogers in the running game with Devin Dampier, and you're going to see some special guys. You're going to see some guys you haven't heard or seen before. I can't wait to see what we have implemented for a guy like Nate Johnson. Right, we're going to see a lot of these other guys that transferred in on this roster that's going to make a difference. The Merriweathers, the Larry Simmons, the Jadrian Zipper. I think he's had a great training camp and off season, and I think that needs to pay off for him as well. Creed Whitmore, he's kind of a specialty guy. I think he could get 4 to 5 receptions a game, but be extremely vital in the return game and in the specialty packages. But mainly you're going to see a lot of RPO game, hopefully up tempo. I love up tempo because of what it does to the defense. So no huddle, get the defense at the line of scrimmage, make sure the defense is all bewildered and confused and befuddled, and run quick plays. If the defense looks settled, slow it down, change the play. I love to see the increase in tempo and decrease in tempo, and have Utah's offense completely controlling everything. That's what I want to see in that first half, and then the rest of the game will tell itself.
All right, Sly, before I set you loose, what's your gut tell you? And this is always an interesting thing for me, too, because a win is a win no matter what. And I'm sure there are some Ute fans that would enjoy just a worry-free, stress-free Saturday night that doesn't feel stressful. But also at the same time, I kind of want to see how some of these Ute players react on a national stage at the Rose Bowl in a game that's close. I don't know how it's going to go. My gut does tell me that line feels right, that Utah wins. But what's your gut tell you Saturday night at the Rose Bowl?
I think it's going to be a close first half, and then we'll pull away at the end of the second half and in the third quarter. That third quarter is always a big test, and I think that we'll make a big jump there. We'll get a great feel for what UCLA wants to do with us. I think it'll be close. I think it'll be like a 10-7, 14-10 type game at halftime, and then by it's all said and done, the final score will be like 34-35-17 is my prediction for Utah. I think that we'll have a nice clean win where our starters are out the last 3-4 minutes of the game, and that's kind of what I'm predicting. It's a great first half. It's going to be Saturday night lights under the Rose Bowl lights. It's going to be absolutely awesome. Great production. And I think it's 34-17 at the end of it, but it's going to be a close first half where we're filling everything out, and we're going to have to get revitalized but expect a big third quarter from our youths defensively and offensively.
Sly, thank you, my friend. Always great insight. It's great that it's game week, so safe travels. Be well, and we'll chat soon, okay?
My man, talk to you soon.
All right, the great Stevenson Sylvester, one of the best to ever do it for the Utes. Of course, on that undefeated 2008 team, Pittsburgh Steelers, Super Bowl champ, and part of our broadcast team. Don't forget Utah football in action on Saturday at 9 o'clock at the Rose Bowl. Our pregame coverage with Porter will begin at 5, and then you'll have game day coverage all throughout the night. It's going to be a late night for our guys on the broadcast team. All right, like any good coach, it's time to update the game plan for a healthy green lawn. As the hot weather continues this month, make sure you're using IFA's Step 3 Summer Lawn Food for healthy turf that stays green in every season. IFA's Step 3 Lawn Food, it's the ultimate lawn owner power move with our good friends at IFA. All right, we'll catch a break. 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. More Utah football in the 3 o'clock hour. It's Josh Furlong, and then Coach Witt. We'll let you hear from him. He addressed the media earlier. We do that every Monday during the college football season. The voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, stops by. Andy Larson from the Salt Lake Tribune. And then we'll say goodnight at 6. Busy Monday drive, and it's good to have you along for the ride right here on ESPN 700. Nobody gives a rip about this, but my sister is all over ESPN's broadcast of the U.S. Open right now. Lily, she's everywhere. She's
What up,
on
Lil?
like the 8th row. Francis Tiafoe is playing Nishioka, Japanese tennis player.
There you go.
Is that how you say
Mhm.
it? Tiebreaker, second set. Tiafoe's up 2-0, and I've seen my sister like 10 times. Just thinking out loud is all. No,
Very blonde.
Very blonde. There she is again, 8th row. Man, I didn't even know she was there. I just looked up. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my sis. Anyway, moving on. You guys don't care about that. We're going to bring in Bill Riley today, voice of the Utes. We have Andy Larson from the Salt Lake Tribune. Stevenson Sylvester got us rolling, and now continuing the football conversation with our friend Josh Furlong on a Monday afternoon. Josh, happy Monday, man. How we doing?
Happy Monday, Spence. It's been a good day. How about you?
Yeah, good day, man. It's game week. You know, all of us in this business and all of us in this space wait all year long to be able to talk about college football. And now it's here. Game week plans for you guys over there? What are some of the things you want to let our listeners know you're going to be doing this week for Utah UCLA?
Yeah, we'll obviously have some articles about kind of what the preview of the game is. We'll have some UCLA beat writers coming on, and then we'll be in Pasadena, trying to check out everything and make sure that we give you all the information there, as much as Utah's willing to give us. But we're excited. It's exciting to be able to have a lot of this content out there again, and not just speculate about what this team could be. We actually now get to see what they are.
I will not complain about this all year. And obviously, it is well within the rights of Coach Witt to not release it too deep, not release a depth chart. I always kind of liked it to get an idea, at least. And who knows how much of the stuff is real. But what's your take on the recent decision-making process from the coaching staff to keep the depth chart private this year?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, he's always talked about it being for the fans. Everybody in the department knows who the depth chart is and what it's for. And, if he feels like it's a competitive advantage to hold it back, then more power to him. But you're right. I mean, I think there's some fun with it, right? I think there's a lot of it that we know. We can kind of pencil in a lot of the players. Maybe we don't know if they're one or two, but it just kind of gives some kind of consistency to the reporting and kind of what's there. And so it's different, but at the end of the day, I don't know that I honestly use the depth chart a lot in terms of my reporting. I think you have to have conversations with people and you have to listen to what they're saying to be able to really hear what's going on. In years past, there's been so many times where a player is listed as the starter, for example, or a backup guy, and he's getting more reps than another guy. And so, you take it with a grain of salt. Now it's just more of a formality that we have to really kind of hone in and do our jobs a little bit better to figure out what it is. So, I hate it in some respects, but at the same time, I'm not going to die on that hill of we need to have a depth chart.
So, Sione Vaki, Travis Hunter, I'm not comparing those two, one a Heisman, but we've seen 2A players in college football over the past few years, both locally and nationally. Does the Smith, Snowden, Lander, Barton on offense say anything to you about lack of playmakers on that side of the ball, or is that just more of a testament to the athletes and the potential that those two have?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter in the sense that you're trying to find the best athlete available. Now, with that said, there may be a problem, right? There may be just guys on the offensive side of the ball that aren't producing, and so they're trying to find anybody on the team that can do it. I have my doubts that it's that, but at the end of the day, it may be right. I just think Utah's doing its best to be able to try to find anybody that can produce on offensive side of the ball. There's times where they've thrown these guys in there and got them practicing and warming up, but I don't think that we're going to come to these games and we're going to suddenly see Smith Snowden as wide receiver one, right? I think it's more, I wouldn't even call it gadgetry. I think it's more just trying to utilize him however you can, but he's an incredibly valuable piece. So is Lander on the linebacker unit to be able to have on the defensive side. So I think it's sporadic. I think there's going to be specific looks that they have for these guys. And obviously, if they turn out to be like a Sione Vaki type player, then yeah, you'll utilize them more. But I think right now they're still much more valuable for the defense. It's just trying to figure out who's available, what kind of looks that they can have. I also think there's some gamesmanship there where if you keep throwing out some of these defensive players, now teams have to look at what they could be as well and trying to make it a little bit more challenging. But I do think that they're there. I do think they're going to try to utilize him. I just don't think it's because Utah necessarily has a bad receiving core.
Yeah, my concern here is simply laced in the experience we've all had over the past couple of years with lack of health. And, Morgan was asked about this last week. We had Morgan on the show last week as well, and he said what you would expect him to say about wherever the players can help us win, we need them in those spots. I'm paraphrasing. But I don't know how that lands if something happens to Smith or Lander on offense, and I'm knocking on wood as hard as I can because we don't want any injuries. But I just wonder if there's any concern in that direction based off of the lack of health this team has suffered through over the past 2-3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that has to be, something that Utah's really cognizant of, right? And I think Kyle, more than anybody over these last few years, recognizes that you can't just always, put a guy in a position in there just because he's talented. But yeah, you got to use him and you got to try to find a way to win games. But at the end of the day, you've got to be able to feel comfortable with what you have. And I do think that they're exploring this more this year simply because Jackson Benny is doing well behind Smith Snowden at nickel. You've got a linebacker room that is deeper than they've had, a lot more veteran experience. And so I think not that you're throwing a guy out there necessarily to get injured, but if he does, they're at least a little bit better covered than maybe in years past. So maybe that gives them a little bit more confidence that they can use them. But at the end of the day, if Lander Barton is much more valuable on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to be really judicious on how they use them on the offensive side of the ball. So, I don't think this is suddenly some revolutionary thing where you're going to see like a Travis Hunter type scenario where you're playing both sides of the ball consistently. I think it's more just sporadic and trying to be able to get him in different looks, something that they look up in the game and say, if this happens, we'll utilize you here. And so that's kind of more what I think is going to happen.
Tell me what you've learned about UCLA. It was an interesting season for them a year ago, Deshaun Foster's first, where they just got out of the gates horribly and had a really, really tough schedule. They lost at LSU, home against Oregon. They went to State College and lost against Penn State, and then a home loss against Minnesota. And then in conference play, they had some decent wins. They beat Iowa. They were on the road in Nebraska and got a win. At Rutgers, but Rutgers isn't a great program. They gave USC all USC wanted at the Rose Bowl before losing, then beat Fresno to end the year. So they went 4-2 down the stretch. And obviously, year over year in this sport, it's hard to analyze anything at all anymore because of all the changeover. But I bring it up because it was Deshaun's first year. So he has a year of experience under his belt and proof of concept that down the stretch they could at least win some conference games. It's a new quarterback. It is a new coordinator. They lost 8 of their 10 most impactful players on the defensive side of the football. I just, Josh, haven't read anything or heard anything when it comes to anybody being very bullish about UCLA. Utah is about a touchdown favorite, 6.5, and you get a couple built in on the road. So Vegas thinks Utah's nearly a 10-point better football team than UCLA. But what sort of, if any, poses does UCLA, present that Utah's going to have to watch out for?
Yeah, this is the interesting with UCLA. They're kind of treating this very similarly the way Utah does, in the sense that they're not releasing a ton of information, and so the media there is really frustrated because they're used to a little bit more access and they haven't been able to get it. So, similar in the sense that we don't know a ton. Now, with that said, obviously everybody knows who Nico Iamaleava is. He's expected to be a great quarterback, dual threat guy. That's going to be the difference, right? Has he improved from last year? Obviously got a team to the playoffs, but he wasn't necessarily credited as the guy that got them there. Where does he take that step forward with a new offensive coordinator who's kind of quote unquote a QB whisperer? I think they feel good about that. But the biggest weakness I would say for this UCLA team, at least, based on what we've seen or heard, is that they just don't have the bodies right now in terms of production and experience in the trenches. And so that becomes a real worry for UCLA in the sense that, let's look at Utah. Their offensive line is expected to be one of the best in the country, assuming that they are what they say they are. That becomes a massive worry for this UCLA team that has to stop that, and try to contend with that and try to create havoc plays against Utah. You're not winning those. Now, on the other side of the ball, the defensive unit, they're replacing a ton of talent, and obviously they're going to the transfer portal as well and trying to be able to find guys that can produce and be effective. But it's still a crapshoot. Honestly, I think this is a tough year for UCLA because they've lost a lot of players. They're trying to go to the portal. They're trying to find answers that are different from what they were last year. But I think there's optimism that they can be a little bit better than last year. I don't think anybody thinks that they're going to contend for a Big Ten championship, but I think there's optimism that they can be a little bit better. What that means remains to be seen. I mean, I think if Utah is what we believe that they are, they should be favored in this game. But you can't take that, on face value alone. This is a team that's still going to be pretty solid. They've got talented guys. They've got a great offensive coordinator. They've got a good defensive coordinator who knows what to do. It's just a matter of these guys stepping up when the game's played. And, I'm really fascinated because these are two teams that were 5-7. So they both have something to prove. And, really this game could kind of dictate the season for either one of these teams.
Tell me what, and we just talked to Sly about this. What's your gut tell you as far as what you think the outcome's going to be? Again, the game line feels about right to me, about a 7-point line, 6.5, depending on what sports book. And certainly you fans will love a worry-free Saturday evening, an anxiety-free experience. College football fans, I think, stress watch their teams as much, if not more, than any other sport. Then there's part of me, Josh, that wants to see how Devin responds in a close game on national television at the Rose Bowl. I wouldn't mind if it's close, just to kind of see what his relationship is with pressure on a level that we haven't seen just yet. But what's your gut tell you? What do you think is going to happen on Saturday night?
Yeah, I think this is one of those games where, you're not really going to know much until later in the game. I think it's a week one game. As much as each of these teams feel like they've got what it takes to be able to compete, it's going to be sloppy, right? There's going to be times where you look at that offensive line most likely and say, okay, this is one of the top units in the country. I think it just takes time to gel, and everybody's kind of working together to figure it out. So I wouldn't at all be surprised if this is a close game going into the third, fourth quarter. But I do think that Utah has enough to be able to kind of withstand that and be able to pull away late, win by 7-10. That's kind of where I'm looking at it. But to your point, I think Devin Dampier would be great to be able to have that opportunity to be able to fight a little bit, right? If he comes out there and throws, 3 quick touchdowns and Utah goes up 21-zip, not saying that that's a bad thing, but I don't know that you learn much about who Utah is. Maybe you do. Maybe you know that they're a really solid offense, but I would like to see him kind of tested before he has to go into the heart of the schedule of Texas Tech, Arizona State, BYU. You've got to be able to have something, and this feels like the biggest test for him. Now, don't get me wrong. If Utah wins by 21 points, I don't think there's anybody that's going to say, I just wish that he was tested more. But I think that's going to be more valuable for Utah, assuming that they can make the right decisions and do what they need to be able to move forward. But yeah, 7-10 feels kind of like a good spread for me in terms of what they could do.
What have you learned about Coach Beck as a play caller in studying, the film from a year ago? Obviously, he was able to show proof of concept on a high level with how productive they were at New Mexico a year ago. But for our Ute fan listeners that are not familiar with this new OC, what would you say to them about what you're expecting, just generally speaking, as a play caller coming up on Saturday?
Yeah, this is a guy that obviously he wants to utilize the strengths of his talent on the roster, right? And so he can be different in kind of how he approaches this. He does run an RPO-based /spread type offense, which is something that probably most college football fans are familiar with anymore. It's just kind of in vogue in terms of what college is doing, but he kind of adds his own wrinkles. Now, I'm curious to see what those wrinkles are. Everybody that we've talked to said it's different, even though it is still an RPO game. But it's different in the sense that he's trying to do the best to be able to tailor his offense to his skills players. In years past, he hasn't had tight ends, for example, that are as effective as what Utah has. And so you're going to see a little bit more tight end usage at Utah than what you saw at New Mexico. It's not going to be what we had with Andy Ludwig in terms of doing, 11, 12, 13 personnel, but he's going to utilize them in different ways where they become different types of players, maybe more so of a Dalton Kincaid type level, maybe a Brant Keithy level, where you try to get them the ball. But from that, you also have, option plays. You have quick screen passes. You have, a lot of movement and trying to get the ball out fast. while trying to just get that defense thinking. So there's going to be a lot of different looks where, the defense can say, oh, yeah, last time they ran it here, or last time they pitched the ball here, or it was a screen pass, and then they'll flip the script and do something else to be able to keep them guessing. So there's going to be a lot of that. At the same time, you're going to see an offensive coordinator that is not unwilling to change in the game. He's going to see what works best, and he's going to continue to try to ride the hot hand. So I'm curious to see how that works, how he makes those in-game shifts and adjustments. But it sounds like he's much more open and receptive to trying to make sure that they change and don't just stick to a full game plan or a script that they've already crafted out before the game.
Do you like this type of challenge? We were discussing this earlier. I mean, Tarleton State went and hung 42 on Portland State at home. BYU is going to win by 1 million. I don't know what we're going to learn about them, if anything at all. And Stanford didn't look good against Hawaii either. BYU's non-con, I don't think will prepare them for conference play. Honestly, I don't think it's the right approach. And obviously, there's no way of knowing how bad some of these teams are going to be. Stanford in the past has had decent football teams. And UCLA is not a world beater, but from what you're hoping to learn about Utah, do you like this type of test at the Rose Bowl as game one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can serve a good purpose, right? I mean, I don't love the FCS games being as, the first game. I understand the relationship that you have to have with the FCS games at times. Personally, I would move those to spring and play that as an exhibition game, but that's a different conversation. But I think, UCLA is a good test because they're a good Power 4 team, but they're not going to be, this top team. At least they're not expected to be. And so you're going to still get a test, but you still have, on paper, a winnable game. I would say it would probably be more advantageous to get maybe a team like a Wyoming in week one. It's not as challenging on paper. You can still kind of go through some of the wrinkles or different things that you need to work out without having frustrations of kind of a key game on your schedule. So, I think it gets people excited because it's a fun game to start the season. But I mean, you could convince me in many different ways of how this game should be, or what game should be played in week one. Either way, I think it's a good opportunity for Utah to be able to get, their blood jump started, kind of move forward. You can kind of correct any mistakes that you had in week two against an FCS opponent and then kind of build up to conference play. So, I don't hate the way that they've laid it out this year, but it does present some problems if you do have to go up against a tough team, in the first week.
I know I ask you every week, but it just seems to be the room that everybody, including the coaches, have expressed the most, consternation, I suppose, is one term. Just the unknown nature of who these weapons are on offense on the outside with the wide receiver room. We're going to play Coach Witt's media comments from earlier, his presser. We do it every Monday. That's going to be our 3:30 segment, so we'll hear what he has to say. But what's your current understanding of how that room is shaping up? Do you have a gut feel who wide receiver one is? Is there enough depth? Do you have confidence that that room is where it needs to be 5 days prior to the first game?
I think there's optimism that it can be, right? I think they have the guys that they feel confident about. They've got guys that have the length, they've got the speed, they've got the ability to run the routes the right way. So I do think that they have confidence that they've got connections with Devin Dampier that this is going to work. For me, Tobias Merriweather seems to be wide receiver one. I think he's done enough, or at least he sounds like the guy. I mean, Kyle Whittingham said today that, that he gives them confidence based on what he's done in practice. Now, that's got to translate to the field, and we'll see what happens. He's been a guy that has always been that wherever he's been, whether that be at Notre Dame or at California, but he hasn't fully lived up to that on the field. So it's easy to say, yeah, he can be wide receiver one, but he has to show up there. With that said, on the other side, I do think Larry Simmons is going to be a talented player. Creed Whitmore will be another guy. I think Creed Whitmore is one of those guys, time they're freshmen. And so what mistakes are they going to make that's going to cause some frustrations? I don't think it's necessarily going to be a huge problem if they have to play, but I am curious to see kind of where they go. We know Dallas Vakalahi will be in there as a pencil starter. Leaky Vamahi assumingly should be there. But who are the guys that are going to fill in the gaps? Who are going to be the guys that are going to back up that? So those would be the two positions that I think I'd have the least amount of confidence in terms of knowing what's going on. But I don't know that there are major problems. I think Utah's done at least a good job in fall camp understanding what they've done.
All right, Josh, before I set you loose, we did have some college football over the weekend. It was Farmageddon in Dublin. Kansas State, Iowa State. Iowa State gets the win. A couple of really gutsy play calls from Matt Campbell, who's not really known for that. Fourth down conversions, and it was a close game, but I did not think it was a good game. And if I'm Matt Campbell or if I'm Chris Kleiman, I'm actually pissed that's how I had to start my season. The time zone thing is one thing. Traveling overseas, okay, you get it. TV partners trying to expand the footprint. Okay, that's fine. The field was atrocious. They were not prepared for this this game at all. You've got to make sure if it's going to be inclement weather, you got to handle things like that if you're going to put on a college football game. And if you're K-State, you're behind the eight ball now, and it has conference implications. I don't know. I did not think it was a great college football game. It was fun to have football back, and it was close down the stretch. But what did you make of just the entire Dublin experience for these two Big 12 teams?
Yeah, I don't love it. I mean, I think on the surface, it sounds like a good idea. It's fun to be able to expand the game and try to move it to different locations. But I think the field conditions alone just made it a challenge, right? You're taking a game that is very dependent on college campuses. That's where the fun is. That's where the tailgating comes from. That's where all these fun things come. And so you're taking it out of its element just to be played in front of people that may or may not have interest. And I felt like it was a distraction, seeing that game on that field. You could hardly see the lines. You didn't know what was going on. The production level just wasn't there for either one of these programs. And look, rain exists in the United States as well, and teams have to figure that out. But at the same time, everything just kind of felt wonky after you got out of the first few minutes of college football's back. We're excited for it. And it just didn't have that allure that I was expecting to have. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't love that these games get scheduled. I think that there's better ways to handle this. I still don't love playing in bowl games as the beginning of the season as a neutral site, but at the same time, I'd rather that than going across the world to play a game where the conditions aren't great. They're not prepared for that, and you've got two teams in a really tough Big 12 conference race that now have to kind of go through those elements to figure out something that's going to be, on their resume for their conference record. So not a fan by any means, but I think, we did learn some stuff. I just don't know that week 0 game is going to really foretell anything for the season.
All right, man. Well, good stuff. Game week, it's here. Safe travels. Keep up the good work, and we'll chat soon.
Sounds good, Spence. Appreciate it.
Josh Furlong, make sure to follow him and follow along all of his work all season long. If you're a Utah football fan, at JFurKSL is where you find him on Twitter. And, good guest on the show. Joins us on a pretty consistent basis. We have some breaking news. It looks like the Bengals and the Trey Hendrickson kid, they've come to an agreement on a 1-year, $30 million deal. That was kind of the last NFL holdout, as Terry McLaurin got paid earlier today as well. 10 days away from the first NFL game. It's Philly and it's Dallas. So there you go. All right, I want to tell you about my friends at Advanced Window Products. Our buddy Nate Orchard, still the mayor of Sac Lake City. They're great people. Been working with them for a while. Done some remotes at their spot. And it's kind of that time of year where school's getting going. Maybe you're buying or selling a home. And obviously with the temperature still being pretty warm, Monday show. And it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. Football season is here, and the Utah ESPN radio network is getting you ready with 31 days of football presented by Baskin-Robbins. Tune in daily for the best coverage in the NFL and local college football. It's the 31 days of football presented by Baskin-Robbins on your home of football right here, ESPN 700. That breaking news, Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals have agreed to a one-year deal. The number is $30 million, but as you know, with NFL contracts, you have to look at the guarantees, and I haven't seen any information on that. Amari Cooper is on his way to the Raiders, who he's with the Bills most recently, but obviously a really good receiver back in the day, just aged a little bit. We will bring in Bill Riley today, voice of the Utes in the 4 o'clock hour, then Andy Larson from the Salt Lake Tribune. So if you missed Stevenson Sylvester or Josh Furlong, that's how we started the show off. On this Monday afternoon, of course, it is game week for us on the station, 5 days away from Utah, UCLA, BYU, Utah State, all 6 of our local D1 teams in action coming up this weekend. But as we do every Monday during the college football season, just in case you missed it, here's Utah head football coach Kyle Whittingham.
Going down to the Rose Bowl in 5 days for a game against the Bruins. Program is very familiar to us, although I'd venture to say probably 90% of the players are different from when we played them 2 years ago the last time. And so even though we're very familiar with the venue and the program, it'll be very new as far as personnel and the guys we're going to face. So, we know they got a new offensive coordinator, come from Indiana, so a lot of film study on the Indiana scheme last year. Defense coordinator's back, new special teams coordinator, big, strong, athletic quarterback transfer from Tennessee. So we're doing like any opener. There's a lot of unknowns. Even when you're playing a team that has had very little turnover, there's still a lot of unknowns and things that you're going to have to adjust for in game, and not at halftime. Well before that. So there may be some adjustments we have to make, very likely in the first quarter. And typically in an opener, teams that do the best job of that have the best chance of winning. So hopefully we'll be on our game as far as that goes. So questions.
Okay, this question is from...
What are you doing, Paul? Okay, all right. Justin, we better start off with Justin. I forgot about that. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate you coming, Justin.
Okay, Justin says, coming out of fall camp and after last year's struggles, what do you see the identity of the team being this year?
Well, there's a lot of new faces, I can tell you that. So 50% of the guys we got, weren't a part of what went on last year. But we're excited about things we're doing on offense. It's a new scheme and new quarterback, and I think there'll be some hopefully some good stuff there. Defense has been very solid all through fall camp, and although they've had some difficulty stopping the offense at times, so hopefully that's a good indicator for offense. But you never know what you're going to get until you line up and play somebody else. You can only learn so much playing against yourselves. But I know our guys that were here last year and went through that debacle, I guess, for lack of a better word, are excited to get back on the field and get going and try to make a better showing.
Now, speaking with that, the identity, how important is it to establish that offensive identity in week one as just letting it kind of evolve as the season goes?
Well, I think there'll probably be a little of both. We know who we want to be and what the scheme entails and what the emphases, whatever that word is. But it'll also be an evolution. I mean, that's just how it is when you have again half a new team. You don't know a whole lot about a lot of the guys, and you got to see how they react in the game situation and who starts to come on and make plays. And every year seems to be two or three guys will really surprise you, and a couple of guys that thought you were going to be able to count on don't produce as well. So we'll see how that goes.
Kyle, you kind of already harkened on just the struggles that you had last year, but I kind of want to go back to the transfer portal. Does the opportunity, I guess, to reload to the transfer portal every single season kind of make it more enticing to come back in your shoes when you were considering?
That's a good question. First of all, with the 2 portal windows, you never. It's tough to sometimes manage your roster because you got to do it twice a year, and you don't know exactly what you're going to come away with. But the roster or the portal has definitely it definitely cuts both ways. We feel like we did a good job in the portal this year, and then of course the finances come into play as well. Portal guys are more expensive than retaining your own guys, and so but you can't just retain your own guys or you'll run out of guys because they'll eventually graduate. You got to continually replenish with new guys. Typically high school guys are priced pretty high as well, and so it's a balancing act. I mean, it's they have the NFL has the capologist guys, that do the manage the cap, and that's essentially what we have to do, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but the portal certainly allows you to go out and cover up, or not cover up, but replenish and get, if you're thin at a position or whatever, that helps you in that regard. But it's certainly a different ballgame than it used to be, and it's not going to, well, I guess it could return somewhat to how it used to be, but they're going to have a major overhaul of the rules and how things are structured.
Kyle, you brought in a number of receivers through the transfer portal, one with Tobias Merriweather. What gives you confidence that he can become a guy that you need on offense this year?
Well, what we've seen in practice gives us confidence. He's got a big catch radius, 6'5", or close to it, 200 pounds. Very smooth, athletic guy. Runs real well, and just has a real knack for playing the contested ball, as you would expect with a guy with that frame. So what we've seen in practice has been very encouraging. But again, you got to do it on game day.
Kyle, you've opened up against FCS opponents and power conferences teams. What are the advantages of opening up against a team like UCLA as opposed to an FCS opponent?
Well, get your players' attention right away. They've been pointing towards this game since last January, essentially. So it's a little more of an attention getter in that respect. There's pros and cons, and it's a level playing field. I mean, if UCLA's in the same boat, so I don't know if there's a preferred way. If I was going to say what I absolutely prefer is probably maybe to have maybe a lesser opponent that you can find out who you are early on. But I think everyone probably feels the same way. But I don't know if college is going to ever go to a preseason, like the NFL, and that wouldn't be a bad idea, in my opinion. Have a couple preseason games that don't count on the record, but we'll see.
Kyle, you said this is the best offensive line you've had. It brings up the question, how good is UCLA's defensive line, and then their front seven?
Yeah, they're good up front. 58, I believe, is the number. That's their best guy. The interior guy is a really good D tackle. And UCLA, they're going to have big, strong, athletic guys. They always do. They always have ever since we joined the Pac-12, and so they never have a shortage of athletes or physicality. So it'll be a big challenge for our guys. But again, I stand by that this, on paper, this is the best offensive line we've had. We got to go out and prove it. But you got two guys that are, hopefully high draft choices and three seniors inside. I mean, there's no reason why we shouldn't be very solid up front, and that's really the starting point for the offense this year is leaning on that offensive line.
Kyle, you've gone through spring, now fall camp. How do you feel about your decision to come back as we are at game week?
Good. I mean, it's if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't have come back. If I wasn't having the passion for the game and the energy, and because you better have a lot of energy for this job, that. So no second thoughts whatsoever. I'm excited to get the season going and watch these guys play and see what we can do.
UCLA has a similar situation. You guys, new quarterback, new offensive coordinator. What stands out about their offense on film?
Well, the quarterback, first of all, you watch him at Tennessee last year, and he's a playmaker. He's he can throw the ball, he can run the ball. He's a true dual threat guy. He's a tough runner too. He's not looking for a place to fall down or step out of bounds. He dips his shoulder and has some physicality to his runs. A lot like our guy, Devin. Devin is the same way. He rushed for over 1,100 or whatever it was last year, and so there's other than stature, Devin's more of a compact guy, thicker, shorter guy, whereas their quarterback is like I said, 6'6" or thereabouts. So, but he's impressive. He's got a big arm and he's a specimen. That's he looks like Cam Newton, got a stature. That's what he looks like out there.
Kyle, Nico, UCLA's quarterback, held out in the spring and obviously ended up at UCLA. I'm curious just on your thoughts on that situation, but also harken on the idea of multi-year contracts, kind of stopping the idea of players in the portal.
Yeah, well, I don't really have any thoughts on his holdouts. I mean, that's his business, and I wasn't real close to that situation, monitoring it or anything like that, so I don't know. I don't really have a take on that. What was the second part of your question?
The idea of multi-year contracts.
Multi-year contracts. I think there's some merit to that, but I think somehow we've got to get to the point where, and again I say a minor league NFL, not technically, but theoretically, where we're just the same type of setup, same structure, salary cap, that type of thing. Which with it will probably come a union, players union, all that. I mean, what we do right now is not sustainable. I don't believe it is personally, and so they've got to figure out a way to get some sanity to the whole thing. And the prices are spiraling out of control for the NIL, it's not NIL, rev share monies now, and so it's still in a place where I don't think you can continue this way without some major changes.
You talked about needing to establish the run with this team, this offense. How important, though, is it to have success with those wide receivers, and what does success look like that way?
Well, it's very important, and the way that Devin runs the football, with the quarterback run game, we think that's going to force teams to really load the box in order to be able to combat that, which in turn opens up the throw game, and so they work off of each other, but it's important to be balanced on offense. I don't think it's critical to be really good at one and just both subpar at the other. I think balance is the key to all great offenses, and being able to make teams respect both the run game and the throw game, I think, is what you're looking for.
So you mentioned that Nico is a true dual threat quarterback, and you've also used the same phrase to talk about Devin.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think having Devin as your guys' starting quarterback is going to help this defense, as you go up against a true dual threat quarterback in week one?
Help our defense? Yeah. Well, they've seen him all spring and all fall, and so and that's obviously a plus for us. We're still, best guess scenario with the coordinator. Is he going to bring everything he did in Indiana to? You say, is there going to be different influences? Like I said, there's a lot of unknowns going into an opener, but certainly helped us because the Q run game is part of what we do, and so that was obviously something that would be a good preparation aspect for this game.
Hello, Coach.
Hey, PK.
Could you?
Very stoic and old.
Could you put a percentage on Devin's design runs as opposed to him improvising?
Like what percent of the time he carries the ball will be designed as opposed to
per game, sir.
Yeah, he's very elusive, breaking the pocket, I can tell you right now. So it might be close to 50-50 in that regard as far as design pure QB runs and him just getting out of jams. I'll say 50-50. That's a safe starting point.
Kyle, you're getting older now.
I sure am. You got that right.
A couple old guys in the back.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
How are you different now than you were 3 decades ago?
How am I different? Gosh, that's a good question. I've probably mellowed a little bit, I would think. I think if you talk to some of the guys when I first came on board as a head coach, it was very intense and very maybe too intense. But hopefully I know I've become a better listener through the years, and being able to not have some knee-jerk reactions and be able to think things through a little better than I did at the very beginning, and patient, a little more patient than I used to be. How about that? Yeah.
This will be the last question here in the front of the seat.
Ooh, Keeler, all right.
Coach, the Game 0 action, there were, with Iowa State and Kansas State, a couple broken down coverages. How important is having experience in chemistry with your defensive secondary against this UCLA team like that?
Well, that's always important, and the secondary is the first place that can get you beat. I mean, if you're going to, you give up big plays, and so that's, you blow a gap in a run game, it might be a 15-yard gain instead of a 5-yard gain, but you blow something in the secondary, it's usually a touchdown. So that's obviously a critical component of your defense. I wasn't able to see that game. We were practicing right during it, so I didn't have a chance to see it. But we feel like we've got an experienced secondary coming back. The scheme has remained the same for years and years, so the learning curve of those guys was virtually nothing. The new guys had some learning curve, obviously, but we feel like we're in good shape back there, and hopefully in an opener you're going to make mistakes, there's no doubt about it, and if you can just play with great effort, that covers up a lot of the errors that are going to happen. Did you say last question? I'm out of here. Yep. Free.
A kinder, gentler Coach Witt, is that what we're taking away from the presser today? Says he's kind of calmed down a little bit?
Took him a while.
I don't know that I get that from Kyle. And I've said this before, because people always like, hey, well, what's this player like? What's this coach like? There's a really similar energy that Kyle has when he walks in a room that Quinn Snyder had.
Yeah.
It's this maniacal, competitive fire. And it's hard to describe, but you feel it when you're around somebody that has that type of approach.
Everyone in the room's at attention. And there's not like a military officer there telling you to do it. It just is kind of okay, it's time for whatever this guy's got in store for us. And that's kind of a respect that he's earned. I do feel Kyle's softened up a little bit, but I feel he's also really good at compartmentalizing that and knowing when that's okay, right? Knowing that it's when his grandkid's in the room 30 minutes after the game, there's an ability that I don't know that he had maybe before he was a grandpa. I don't know, maybe before he golfed. Golf is a good teacher for patience. I think there's something there.
I'm still working on that portion of my game. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Yeah.
But I will say at least, and I don't know Kyle. I didn't know Kyle 25 years ago. But I've seen a little bit of an edge that I don't think it's a bad thing that he's able to kind of turn off and on at some points. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of what he's getting at.
Yeah, and ultimately the other thing about Kyle that I've always really appreciated is that he's a tremendously decent man.
Yeah,
there's so many of these coaches that they'd never find that balance. The maniacal, competitive, intense, passionate approach they have during practice or a game. It's just kind of who they always are at all times, and oftentimes not the most adjusted people in the world. I've always been fascinated with coaches. And, I almost got into the profession in my early 20s because I was so interested in kind of what, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, whether it's football, basketball, whatever sport, the best analysts, in my opinion, are ex-coaches. Far better than ex-players.
Yes.
More often than not.
Case by case, but yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased, but the Van Gundy brothers and Jeff was the best analyst on television, and ESPN fired him because they thought he was going to take a coaching job, and they hired J.J. Redick, who left for the Lakers 2 months later, which is just hilarious to me. I wonder what Kyle's post-coaching life looks like. He doesn't sound like he's close to done, and as I've said a million times, he's simply a great coach under contract. So I don't report the breaking news that he's coming back. He's a coach that has a contract that's really good at what he does. He could do TV and be good at it. He doesn't strike me as somebody who would want to do that. He's obviously got an administrative role up at the U, so maybe he just rides his motorcycle, plays golf, and hangs out with the kids.
Yeah, I'm going to say, and not to speak for Kyle, I don't see him being like a media guy. That is part of his contract, and if it were not part of his contract, I don't know that you'd see him be doing a lot of it now. Now, he treats us respectfully. He's good to us.
For sure.
But he would not do this part of the job if he didn't kind of have to, I don't think. So, I think that what he does post-football is going to be a little bit of football. I still think that's going to be part of what he's doing. Mac, right? Like Ron McBride is still very much involved in a lot of stuff that goes on up on the hill, even if you don't really know about it. Maybe not now, but 5-10 years ago, when Mac was still going around, when you're talking fundraising, you're talking networking players and coaches and kids in the transfer portal. That's the guy who was involved. And it sounds like Kyle probably will be as well, and maybe officially in some form, right? I don't know, GM or whatever it looks like post coaching days. I think he'll stay somewhat involved, and then I think there's going to be a lot of time to golf and do his own thing.
I will say this, and I'm not saying this is going to happen with Kyle, but I never thought Lavelle Edwards would ever do media, and I did radio with Lavelle for years. He was on our old station doing a lot of pre-aff and post-game coverage. We had a show with him every single week. And you know who I never thought would be in front of a microphone for 2 seconds is Dr. Hill, is Chris Hill.
That's fair.
And, Dr. Hill's good enough to come in studio, and Lavelle, and it was so entertaining to hear Lavelle and Mac tell stories. It was such a fun show to be a part of from time to time. So I wonder if in 10, 15 years, if he softens to the idea a little bit.
Well, here's what I'll make a caveat on that. Will he come on our show? Will he do radio hits? I think so. I think he knows that we played enough of a part in this ecosystem that he'll give back in that way. Will he work for a media company? Will he take a job? That's what I don't really see.
Yeah.
But no, he'll be around. He'll talk about the Utes and be involved in that regard.
So if you missed Coach Witt, we played it last segment. It's up on our website, which is ESPN700sports.com. Every Monday during the college football season, when Coach Witt addresses the media, we will bring it back around during our afternoon drive show here on ESPN 700. We'll catch a break. We got 2 hours in the books. We have 2 hours to go. Your 4 o'clock hour is Bill Riley and Andy Larson. So a lot of youth football. We'll do a little jazz RSL, launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the show. Then we'll say goodnight at 6 on a busy Monday drive. And it's good to have you along for the ride right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network.
Second down and 10. Colson play action. From his own 2-yard line over the middle. Picked off and into the end zone. It's a pick six for Smith Snowden. It's Smith Snowden with a pick six. He read it and took it to the house.
Game week is here. You guys have been waiting for a long, long time, and it is official. We are 5 days away from Utah football at the Rose Bowl to take on UCLA. Game starts at 9 o'clock. Our pregame coverage with that guy, Porter Larson, will begin at 5, and then our next guest will take over the mic, and he'll have a late night, hopefully a good one, the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, on a Monday afternoon. Happy game week, sir. How are you?
Spence, what's good with you? How are you?
I'm pumped, man. I'm pumped. It's a great week. Obviously, we had some college football last week. We're 10 days away from NFL football. It's one of the best times of year. So all good here, man. How about you?
I'm same way. I enjoyed a little appetizer of college football over the weekend. Got fantasy football drafts coming up, NFL football, and then, of course, the opener this week for the Utes at the Rose Bowl, where we've had a lot of fun calling games. Some good, some bad, some wild, some just crazy days down there. So hoping for a good start to the season on Saturday.
Let me kick the tires with you about what we saw over the weekend. If I'm Chris Kleiman or Matt Campbell, I mean, Iowa State gets the win, so if you're Matt, you're feeling good. But I'm a little bit upset about just the logistics, the schematics, having to start off my season with a game that has a ton of implications. These are two good teams. On a field that was not ready, with conditions that were awful, and a crowd that just didn't look like it was into it. You know, you called soccer for a number of years, Riles, and trying to force college football on fans in Dublin feels a little bit like trying to force soccer on American sports fans that just don't love it. And I get it. I mean, we cover soccer, and obviously I have ties over there, as do you. So. But if somebody is not into soccer, I'm not like forcefully trying to get them to cheer. Like if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. But I don't know, man. Like if I'm either one of those coaches, I don't know that I'm pleased with that experience. What were your takeaways after watching that game?
Well, the game was sloppy early, as first games tend to be, and they were playing in the rain, and the turf wasn't, it was a grass field, but it wasn't a football field. My biggest issue, if I was Kleiman or if I was Matt Campbell, is I don't want to play a conference game to begin the season.
For sure.
And I sure don't want to play a conference game against a team that, that's going to be one of the best. It's a matchup of two top conference teams. Now, I know both teams have to play it, and they've got the whole off season to prepare, but you don't have a preseason in college football. And to me, to be fair, and I know there were a lot of K-State and Iowa State fans that traveled to Dublin to see that game, but that game is supposed to be played in Ames or Manhattan.
Yep.
That is a rivalry game that's been played that would be like taking Utah and BYU and playing it in Mexico City for some reason. You know what I mean? It makes no sense whatsoever. Now, play a non-conference game. Notre Dame and Navy played up there a couple of years ago. If you're going to do that, that's fine. But to remove a conference game between two fan bases that are rabid, that have played for 107 straight years, and to play it in an opener, I'm with you. That doesn't feel good to me. And I know if you're Iowa State, you feel good today about it because you've got a conference win in your back pocket against a top 25 team. But it doesn't. For me, that's a game that should be played at home in front of home fans in a rivalry situation. But I don't like the idea of beginning your season with a conference game 4,000 miles from home.
Yep. No, I agree. We're on the same page there. All right, let's scout the opponent a little bit. UCLA, Deshaun Foster's first year last year, started out horribly, and they also had a really rough schedule. But they went 4-2 down the stretch, and they got some good conference wins, at Nebraska. The difficult part of analyzing anything about a year ago in the sport of college football is now it's a brand new roster. They got a new coaching staff. They've got a new offensive coordinator. And Bill, I haven't read any preview that is overly optimistic that this team is ready to do anything other than maybe make a bowl. I think the Vegas line for them is 5.5 wins. So maybe they can get to 6, and it feels like they're confident in their quarterback, their running back. They kind of like their own line. They lost 8 of their 10 most impactful defensive players, according to PFF. But what have you learned about UCLA? What is Utah up against on Saturday night?
It's hard to say, Spence, as you mentioned. Well, last year, remember Deshaun Foster, Chip Kelly left for the NFL was it was at Ohio State. But it was like April or May, I think. And so he got a late start on recruiting, or maybe it was a little earlier than that, but he got hired late. And then, today's transfer portal coach leaves. So last year was just kind of a scramble, try to fit things together. And it didn't work great. In fact, to the point, they only brought back 3 coaches from last year's staff. They not only turned their roster over, they turned their coaching staff over as well. Now, they like Tino Sunseri. He's the offensive coordinator. He was part of that Indiana team that was so good a year ago. UCLA's defense, it was a little bit like Utah's kind of sort of last year. They were on the field. They weren't bad. They had some NFL guys on that defense. They were just on it a lot because the offense was so horribly bad. I mean, they were really, really bad offensively last year. So I think they've recruited. I think they've got a better staff on board. And I think that they've recruited better, and they've got a lot of athletes in the system. Obviously, Iamaleava, the transfer from Tennessee at quarterback, has gotten a lot of attention. But these are guys that haven't played together. A lot of guys were late adds in the portal in the spring and summer, and it's a brand-new coaching staff. So it's hard for me to know what to expect from this UCLA team. I do know they like their athleticism there a lot, but you've got a lot of moving pieces that haven't been together for a long time.
Yeah, it's been kind of a challenge to try to dig in to learn exactly what we're going to see here. I mean, Coach Witt today talked about going to study Indiana tape because that's where the Sunseri kid was coaching a year ago. Then you got to watch Tennessee film to see what Nico's all about. What is your – we had Sly on earlier. I'll ask you the same question. What's your gut tell you? But, part of me feels like that line is pretty good. Utah minus 6.5 or 7, depending on which sports book you look at, and that kind of feels right to me. I mean, you get a couple of points built in if you're the home team. So Vegas essentially is telling you Utah is about a 10-point favorite, 10 points better than UCLA. Part of me thinks that's kind of right. Do you think we've got a close one Saturday night? Or do you think there's a chance the Utes could run away with it?
I don't know because I like Utah. I think Utah should be favored, and for entertainment purposes, I think that feels pretty good about where things are. But Spence, first games are hard to know, hard to see. Utah's offense has been great in the spring. They've been great in the summer, but they haven't done it in a real situation. Good news is the quarterback's been in the offense before, so I think Utah on paper is the better team. The coaching staff has been intact mostly for a long, long time. Got a ton of returning players, especially on the defensive side and up front on the offensive line. So, I like Utah in the game, but I don't Iamaleava is a crazy good athlete. He is every bit. He's bigger than Devin Dampier, but he's a terrific athlete. My big question with UCLA is, who is he throwing to? Because they lost their top receivers from a year ago. They thought they were bringing in a top rated wide receiver, and that didn't happen. He ended up not being there. A kid named Caden Robinson. So I'm just going to be really curious to see the playmaking side of things for UCLA. And Deshaun Foster's also a guy. He was a great running back at UCLA, and he was running backs.
For the state kids, so they're rebuilding their front. And like I said, they lost 8 of their top 10 most impactful defensive players, and down the stretch, their defense was actually pretty decent, but they're expecting to take a big-time step backwards on that side of the football. So I suppose, Bill, and we've also been debating this, it feels like a good opening matchup for an offense that we're all learning about still with the University of Utah. A P4 team, a great college football venue, national television, of course, radio here on ESPN 700. And if what I'm reading is correct and UCLA's defense is where the question marks are, hopefully that will allow this offense to kind of show out a little bit kind of week one. So offensively from Utah, what are you hearing for our fans that aren't super familiar with Jason as a play caller? What sort of balance do you think we're in for? Obviously, a lot of it has to do with the flow of the game.
Well, Jason is a play caller that, in Morgan Scalley and Kyle Whittingham's words, Spence, stresses the opposing defense. That was one of the real reasons Scalley and Whittingham liked him so much, was when they put the New Mexico tape on, when they put the Syracuse tape on where he was too, his offenses stressed the defense. And I think he's going to do that this year. It's not going to be a lot of what we saw with Andy with, 3 tight ends on the field and stuff, but they run the football. I know people think spread offense, and it's a little bit of a spread, but remember, they ran for over 3,000 yards last year at New Mexico. They had a quarterback over 1,000, a running back over 1,000, and then the rest of the committee went over 1,000 too. And with the offensive line Utah has, and Beck told me, and we had his last podcast with me, my Under the Headset podcast series dropped last Friday. He said it's the best offensive line he's ever been around as a player or a coach at any level. So I would be shocked if Utah doesn't really lean on those guys up front, because when you can impose your will on another team and you can just line up and run for 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 yards and gash a defense, it allows everything else to happen. And then when you have a quarterback like Devin Dampier who is mobile behind an offensive line like that, it could yield some really good things. And again, UCLA on their defensive side of the football, they've retooled their front. So it could be a new front going up against one of the best offensive lines in college football.
So when it comes to, and I think this is going to be fun, and in no way am I criticizing it, but I wanted to ask you, and I kicked the tires with Sly on this earlier, Lander and Smith, of course, Big 12 Media Days, they hop on the show. They're like, I told them that Coach Witt had informed us that they're playing offense this year, which they didn't realize he had. And since he talked about it, they were able to talk about it. Do you view it at all as an indictment on lack of playmakers on offense, or is it just more of a compliment to Lander and Smith? And it's just like, Morgan was asked about it last week, and he joked that he was mad. Obviously, he's not, and said all the right things. But is that just a compliment to these athletes, or is it an indictment on lack of playmaking on offense?
Oh, no, I don't think it's an indictment, Spence, because as I've watched fall camp, they've got playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. I think what it is we're in a day and age where, and I think Utah learned this lesson a few years ago when all of a sudden Sione Vaki appeared out of nowhere and he was making plays. I think it's just getting guys, and I think we're seeing this across college football too. I wouldn't call it the Travis Hunter effect because he's a unicorn and a standout, but if you have good athletes, utilize them. I just think you put them in the position to help you make plays. Like I've said this a lot. I don't think you're going to see Smith and Lander line up 60 or 70 times a game on the offensive side of the football because they're so valuable on defense. But they both have unique skill sets as athletes. And, Lander was a fantastic, I think he was an all-state wide receiver at Brighton High School. He's put on a little weight since then, so it's probably more like a tight end's body. And then Smith Snowden's just a freakishly great athlete. I just think if you've got guys that can help you make plays, that you utilize them. You have, I think it's probably more package related than it is, you're going to be out there for 60 plays. I think it's probably each one of those guys would be my guess. I don't know because I'm not in the meeting rooms, would probably have a package of plays that you could utilize them in. But it won't surprise me at all on Saturday night if we see Barton and Smith Snowden doing some offensive things.
I think we're long past the point of, needing scheduling uniformity in college football. I've talked about it for years. SEC is going to go to 9 conference games. The ACC is apparently kicking the tires on it. When it comes to the dynamic of a game like this, and Coach Witt was asked about this today, because BYU is playing Portland State. Tarleton State hung 42 on Portland State at home. So BYU is going to win by 1 million. And if when asked whether or not when Coach today was asked whether or not he wants a challenge or a lesser game, he said this, quote, "If I was going to say what I would absolutely prefer is probably to play a lesser opponent so that you can find out who you are early on." And then he finished, I think everybody probably feels the same way. What are your thoughts on that dynamic where BYU's got a cakewalk and their starters are probably going to sit in the second half and Utah is going on the road to take on a legitimate P4 team?
Yeah, I think we need schedule uniformity, Spence, when it comes to the number of conference games you play for sure. But I would love to see conferences kind of line up. Here's what we'd like to see from you on the conference. And I think the SEC is doing this. It was either the SEC or the Big Ten where they're going to 9. Maybe it was the SEC going to 9 and then almost requiring one of those other 3 games that you have to be against a a Power 4 type of opponent. I've always said I love that. I'm not a huge fan of big programs necessarily playing 1AA. Sometimes you have to by scheduling metrics, but I'd like to see, a really good opponent, and then, maybe a lower level, if it's not another P4, at least a high level group of 5, and then see, but the 1AAs, they're hard because in essence what they are is scrimmages. But if you had the uniformity across the board that said, okay, everybody can play one of those, you play a group of 5, and then you play another P5 or P4 conference school. As long as you've got uniformity and everybody's doing the same thing, but you see some schools lining up, and I saw somebody that's even in the Big 12 playing like 3 straight home games against a 1AA and then very low level group of 5 schools, which is your prerogative. But then when you have to step it up to conference play in that 4th week, that might hurt you too.
You referenced this a little bit earlier because, there's just no doubt that Iowa State K-State game was tremendously sloppy early on. How confident, and Coach Witt talked about this earlier today as well, and to your point, week 1 with a bunch of new players, I try to set expectations realistically to my listeners as opposed to going over the top because expectations lead to misery, as we know. Like I said, I feel like this will be a win for Utah, but do you think we're gonna suffer through some mistakes early on? Do you think it's gonna look a little sloppy until it doesn't?
I don't know. Here's the other thing. Kyle Whittingham still runs pretty physical practices, Spence. I think some of what we saw on Saturday had to do with weather conditions too. It was a pretty rainy, wet, sloppy kind of a day, plus it was a first game. It's not going to be that Saturday night at the Rose Bowl. It's going to be pristine, great venue, great weather, the whole thing. But I don't know what the practice schedule was for either Iowa State or Kansas State. But, teams that are a little bit more physical in fall camp, I think have an easier time adjusting once it starts. Teams that aren't quite as physical and shy away from the hitting, I think those are the teams that sometimes struggle. Now, both Kansas State and Iowa State have reputations of being physical football teams. It may just have been a case of 2 teams that were physical in fall camp met on the field and they were physical and it was a wet, rainy day. But I will say sometimes you see schools that back away from it, have a little bit more of a harder time acclimating in that first game for a quarter or 2 until they get used to the speed of it. Utah's never really dealt with that because Kyle, even by today's standards, still runs pretty physical camps.
So, of course, we know we're not getting too deep, so we're not getting depth charts. And, it's always just kind of fun to get those things to kind of understand exactly, the mindset heading into games. And look, I think oftentimes the depth chart didn't even accurately give us an idea of who eventually would players start, but we're not going to get them. So ultimately, give me a positional group or maybe a couple that you're most curious to see who A starts and who B plays.
I'll start on the defensive line because there's lots of new faces, but this has been a position group in fall camp that they've kind of raved about. Logan Fano is back to pre-injury Logan Fano, and he's the one proven commodity on that defensive end side of things. I want to see who emerges opposite him. Is it Lance Holtzclaw, the transfer from Washington? Maybe it's one of the youngsters, like a kid like Cash Dillon, a second-year kid out of Corner Canyon. And then the tackles in the middle, too. We've heard a lot about Poo-Poo this fall camp, the defensive lineman, the tackle from the island of Hawaii, who was a 2-time basketball player of the year over there, who's now playing defensive tackle. I want to see how that rotation works because when Utah's at its best, they're rolling fresh bodies in every couple of plays. They're rolling 4 or 5 ends, 4 or 5 tackles in on a game. So that's probably the position group I'm most anxious to see. And then I just want to see the wide receiver rotation because I think they've kind of got their top 7 wide receivers. But being in the top 7 doesn't mean that you are guaranteed. You have a couple of drops you might get out of there. So I want to see how they work the rotation of those wide receivers. And, Tobias Merriweather's had a really good fall camp. Kyle Whittingham's talked about him a few times. So let's see if that can translate over into game situations and some guys who can make some plays down the field.
Give me your best guess, running back, snap count, carries and such. I know they've got 2, at least 2 that they like. How do you think it looks game 1?
Oh, I think you'll probably see 4 play. I think Wayshawn Parker probably gets the most carries, followed by Nakiri Rogers. And then the youngsters, Bray and Guillory and maybe even Green, they kind of, may get mixed into the group too. And too, Spence, it really depends on how the game goes. If Utah gets out to a big lead and they're just going to pound that ball, they're not going to put it in the air. If they get a couple of touchdown lead, they're just going to grind it. You might see those other running backs play quite a bit in that second half. But my guess would be Parker probably gets the most carries, followed by Rogers, pretty close behind him. And then they'll mix those younger backs in behind him with a handful of carries too.
All right, Riles, before I set you loose, you referenced, Poo-Poo playing basketball. I just have a quick basketball question, even though we're football-centric. Ran into Alex up on campus a couple weeks ago doing the show from what I call the bookstore. Now it's the Red Zone store. It's a much different store than it was 25 years ago. And he's just the best. If you don't like Alex, it's probably a you problem. So, again, in the name of setting realistic expectations, I am going to be very, very cautious about making any audacious statement, hyperbolic prediction. This is an unbelievably good conference. They got better in the offseason. Your Jayhawks are stacked. BYU stacked. What are you hearing about this process that I am going to continue to say will be a long process under Alex Jensen year one?
I think Alex and his staff, coach, the coaching staff up there, they're doing a really good job of establishing what Alex wants. You have to build the culture and what your expectations are in year one, especially. And Utah's not alone in this, Spence. They've got 12 new faces this year. Well, everybody, maybe 13 new faces. But a lot of schools do that now. I think the average Division I Power 4 roster had like 3 returners. Utah's got 1.5 returners because Ibi Traore didn't play last year because of a knee injury. So I think that they're doing a really good job. I've gone over and watched a couple of workouts. The vibe is really good. These guys are together. You see them kind of walking together around campus. They hang out a bunch together. I think the culture building is going really, really well. Now I think it's the on-court part. Now it's we've got a team that's pretty much 6'3" to 6'8", 6'9". We're going to have to get out, be athletic, guard the heck out of you, and get out and run. I'm really anxious to see with this group because they brought a lot of guys in. Who are the shooters that evolve in this group? They've got a lot of guys who can score it, but you got to have a couple of guys who can really shoot it to kind of stretch that defense just a little bit. I think Jacob Patrick, the young man from Germany who played a high-level club ball in Germany for a couple of years, I think he could be one of those guys. I want to see how that evolves. But I think they're doing a really, really good job of culture and roster building now. Now you've got to get the basketball side of it, and I think that's what the next month and a half, 2 months is going to be leading up to the season.
I know you're not a coffee guy. When you know you're going to be on air until like 1, are we talking an additional peach iced tea, hydration?
Oh, yeah.
How do we keep
you know me.
Yeah.
I'm an iced tea guy through and through, so I'll probably have my brewed iced tea that I'll get at the hotel or something. Then I'll probably pick up a couple of Diet Peach Snapples to carry with me into the press box, so it'll carry me over till 1:30 till we get off the air.
You should be an investor in Snapple at this point. You should have equity in that company for how long you've been drinking those iced teas.
They're good. They're good. And, you can't – are you a soda guy? I'm
No.
just not much of a soda guy.
No.
I'll have I love a Coke, don't get me wrong, but I probably have one a week. That's good for me.
Yeah, I'm off the soda, mostly water. Do like a cold brew from time to time. But, look, have a great call. It's great that it's here. And thanks for the time, bud. We'll chat soon.
All right, we'll see you next week, Spence.
All right, Bill Riley, voice of the Utes. Utah in action in 5 days, guys. You made it. It is game week. So make sure to stay tuned to our station. The Saturday game will start at 9 o'clock Mountain Time. Don't forget, it's a late start. Fox will have the television coverage for you, but, of course, we'll have the game here on our radio station, beginning with pregame coverage with Porter at 5 o'clock. And then Bill, Scott, and Sly will take it from there. So Rose Bowl, UCLA, should be a fun opponent. For Utah week 1, they're a 6.5-point favorite. On the BYU side of things, they are a 43.5-point favorite over Portland State, who got it hung on them by Tarleton State over the weekend, 42-0. So Utah football is back. Don't forget, stay tuned, 5 o'clock on Saturday. Catch a quick break. We'll bring in Andy Larson from the Salt Lake Tribune, get back to some college football and pro football storylines, some breaking news out of the NFL with some potential trades and some players signing contracts. So we'll bring that to you later on. 90 minutes left in the show on a Monday edition of The Drive. It's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. 5 days away from Utah football, 5 days away from BYU, Utah State. All 6 of our D1 teams in action coming up this weekend. Week 0 over the weekend saw a Big 12 tilt in Dublin. We'll get back to some college football in a little bit. There's some NFL news we'll get to as well. But we'll switch gears for a little bit. Our buddy Andy Larson on a Monday afternoon from the Salt Lake Tribune. Andy, happy Monday, sir. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Let's start with a little RSL. Does it feel like it might just be kind of like, yeah, let's look towards next season with a group of new players, 4 points out of the play-in game with 7 matches left?
I mean, they still got a chance. Like, I think you probably need between 12 and 15 points the rest of the year to have a realistic shot at a play-in game. And so, yeah, you're looking at, winning 4 to 5 of those games, hopefully. I think it's plausible given the schedule. I think it's a difficult schedule with what those teams that RSL is playing for the rest of the year have added. And they certainly did not look good against Minnesota on Saturday. So, yeah, I would say more likely than not, certainly this is not going to be a playoff team this year.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I felt, after that run of form they had, they kind of bumped them back for a minute across the playoff line, not just to play in. I believe they were at least knocking on the door. Then, maybe get these new additions up to speed. They do have a few weeks off. The Seattle game was rescheduled because Seattle advanced in one of the cups, leagues, whatever. So we've got some time now. So what about the new players? What about DeAndre Yedlin? What about the Olatunji kid, Rowan Cruz? What do you make of the transfer window additions?
I think it's fair to say they've been slow to get involved. Olatunji had the goal last week and looked good doing it, Saturday. I mean, Ron Cruz has been – it's been interesting, right? Like, they've described him as kind of between a 9 and a 10, a 9.5, if you will. But I'm not seeing him necessarily have a lot of success in creating chances in those windows. In the games where he's started – he's not done a lot of playmaking and not done a lot of, I think, successful chance creation that we've seen from RSL. I think obviously they're missing Diego Luna as well, and that's a big part of it. And then, DeAndre Yedlin, I did think had a pretty rough first RSL game, and maybe that makes sense with only 2 days of since the trade to RSL that happens. But it's Yedlin, we know kind of what he can bring in MLS, and so I guess I'm less worried about that. But just like the overall signings, it doesn't look like they're particularly going to be adding kind of that missing element this season, right? And that's what kind of was such a bummer about them not doing anything in the winter transfer window. We've been talking about RSL needing strikers for an entire year now, and to get it done in just the last month has meant that you just don't have enough time to really learn what you have and put together a good team that can actually compete for a playoff spot.
So one more thing here, because you referenced we have not seen the new players play with Diego very much. I think Rowan had a minute with him before Diego's suspension. And I am not one to harp on officials all the time. I think ultimately you just kind of get what you deserve more often than not. But what's fair to say, Andy, I know that they're tremendously frustrated over there. I know that Kurt's been on the phone. Jason's been on the phone. Pablo had to cancel an interview here to get on a Zoom call to discuss some of the missed calls. I think it was after maybe the Charlotte match. And when you listen to their side of things, it's pretty compelling based off of results that have taken points off the table. But what's fair to say about what does feel like a team that's been pretty hard done by some calls all year?
Yes, and I have been very mad about those calls online and off. There's no anti-RSL conspiracy. Come on now, no one cares that much about RSL negatively or positively to say that there's this conspiracy against this team in particular. They have the most cards and most yellow cards in MLS, not because hey, they have gotten the calls go against them in an unfair way, but because this team does kind of have sort of an athleticism and control problem, right? And I think ultimately, if you are in the right spots where you are generating the other team and forcing them to give you yellow cards and finding, the ball on your end of the field and getting touches in the box so you can get penalty kicks, then yes, then those things go your way. But if you're on the back foot because you've scored in the first minute and then want to play defense and park the bus the rest of the match, then that's what's going to happen. Just the random soccer luck things are going to happen. And so, yes, could RSL have, 4 more points this year and then be in a playoff spot? Sure, I guess, whatever. But, that's not how sports work, first of all. And second of all, I just do want them to have higher ambitions than, fighting the refs and pro for edges so that maybe they can eke into the 9th seed of the Western Conference, right? In the end, this is a team that used to be cool and do good things and was a top 5 team in MLS and indeed for a while was the best team in the MLS, was the model for U.S. soccer. And now we're arguing with the refs on whether or not we can finish 9th or 10th in the West or 11th or 12th. It's just, I wish there were more ambition for something greater than that, even as frustrated with the refs, as I think it's fair to be.
Okay, so we're both kind of on the same page about what I perceive to be a situation where I'm kind of looking at next year already. As you referenced, 7 matches left, grip of them at home, but against some really good competition. So before we move off the RSL thing, based off of what you've seen from Diego and Gozo, some of the young players, and these new additions, are you bullish on what they can be right out of the gates next year?
I think it depends on a lot. I think if they don't make the playoffs, right, does Diego Luna stick around, frankly? Does Emeka Nelly want to stick around? Obviously, he is under contract, but, I'm not sure that I'm super stoked on playing on this, 11th in the Western Conference team if there aren't more significant additions. I mean, they do still have, if you look towards next transfer window, the U22 slot open, they have this designated player slot open. If you move Diogo, there's room to do more stuff. And I think that's where the ambition should probably be. And then, frankly, I have to give a nod to the fans here. The fans want Pablo, have been frustrated with Pablo Mastroeni, right? And I think, having a conversation about, hey, what does the coaching staff look like next year? And what system is RSL going to be playing? What are they doing differently tactically than this year? Because, again, the results have just not been there. I don't hate the tactics necessarily, and ultimately my problem with RSL lays kind of elsewhere beyond the coaching staff, but it's hard to argue that everything is that there's kind of much going right for RSL right now, given where they are in the table. You just are what you are and what the results say you are.
I think Pablo's safe. I think they like him a lot, but let me follow up. I mean, ultimately, I've been very critical of what I perceive to be their failure to reinvest funds they received by selling certain players and just signing adequate replacements for others they let go. So I feel like Pablo, I might be a little bit biased because I like him, but I just don't feel like this year he's had near the talent he had a year ago. Where are the frustrations with the coaching staff coming from? What does that sound like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm frankly kind of with you, Spence. I'm more frustrated from a talent acquisition point. Hey, Colorado's spending $7.5 million on Paxton Aronson. RSL spending $5 on Rohan Cruz. I would like to spend at least as much as the Colorado Rapids. But anyway, I think the frustration is in a bunch of places. So I did think the game plan for Saturday was weird. You know what Minnesota likes to do against you. They play this back 5, then they sit back and want to counter. And to play Noel Caliscan and Emeka Nelly and Sam Junka against that team doesn't make a lot of sense given what's going to be tactically required in that match. Now look, you have to do some stuff given the yellow card accumulation, suspensions, and whatever else. But the Caliscan in the middle thing was kind of weird. And then I did think Ruiz made a much bigger difference last week and didn't look awesome, frankly, on Saturday, but could have made a difference. They went to a 3 up at the top in the second half against Minnesota, and that did not work out that well either. I think there is just some tactical stuff that is a little weird. And then the big qualm is always substitutions, and I feel like it is that way with every coach. I do generally wish Pablo would make more subs earlier, but I kind of with you, Spence. I don't know that he has the horses. If you're putting in Ari Peel, are you really feeling good about it? I'm certainly not. So, it's a weird situation where I'm looking more at the talent level compared to other MLS teams than I am looking necessarily at the coaching staff.
Fair enough. All right, moving over to the Jazz. It's the deadest of dead times in NBA basketball. I suppose the schedule is out. Maybe there's some takeaways there. I'm sure you analyzed it in a way that I just haven't. Any main takeaways after the schedule came out just a couple weeks back?
The first couple of weeks are like surprisingly winnable. You have games against like Portland and Phoenix, the probably two of the three worst teams in the Western Conference next year. You've got one against Sacramento as well, also in that group. It's not games that you necessarily expect the Jazz to win. I don't think the Jazz will be necessarily favored in those games, but you can imagine a world where like the Jazz get out to, they're going to be playing Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler to start. You can imagine a world where the Jazz get out to like a 3-3 start, or maybe even 4-2, right? Like, and then all of a sudden now you have kind of momentum of the team, and maybe you end up having a surprising 25-win season or whatever it would be for the Jazz. But look, yeah, I mean, for the most part, the players, the young players are hanging around the Zions Bank basketball campus right now. They're going to be given some time off around Labor Day, and then really a couple of weeks into September, they get everybody back for OTAs to do some workouts before training camp really begins September 30th.
Lauri Markkanen has been, and I'm not really sure, if this really means much of anything, because the pre-Eurobasket competition, they didn't even look like they were guarding him, so he's dropping like 45 in 20 minutes. But can we take anything away? I mean, last Eurobasket that Lauri played in was the year they traded for him, and he killed it there. And then he was an all-star for the Jazz. So, again, with not a ton of Jazz topics, I guess Eurobasket is where we'll go. What do you make of the way Lauri's looked?
Yeah, look, it's a good sign, right? Like the concern with Lauri was if the back injury was real and was going to be hampering him moving forward, right? Like if he wasn't going to be the player that he was in the All-Star year, for example, like then all of a sudden you may have given an albatross contract to a guy who's not worth it anymore. And I think whenever him playing this well and moving as well as he has is just a good sign for what Lauri Markkanen is in 2025 and will be in 2026, right? Like, and so I think that makes him more tradable. I think that makes him obviously a better asset for the Jazz on the court. I think that is, one of the big worries about how this rebuild was going could have been Lauri Markkanen's salary, and I think it is just generally a good sign to have him playing and moving well. But yeah, you're right. Beyond, they haven't played good competition yet. And so we'll see what kind of happens as Eurobasket really begins. But I think just him moving the way he has is just a really good sign. Not that I don't think, we were really worried about that, but I do know that there were some of his suitors around the league that were worried about that and wanted to see him play well, or at least better than he did last season, if they were going to be interested in moving picks and assets for him.
Player under the most pressure this year to show that he's either an NBA starter or an NBA rotational player for the Jazz?
It feels like Keontae George to me, right?
Yeah, I think that's the answer, yeah.
That's actually true. But, there's a world where I think, you just look around the NBA and the value of small scoring guards who don't provide anything on the defensive end. And you have to be really, really good in order to get NBA eyeballs on you right now. I mean, Colin Sexton was traded for negative value, and Colin Sexton is a way better player than Keontae George is right now. So, I think for Keontae, this has to be the put up or shut up year, right? This has to be you have to play defense, you have to play efficiently, you have to play within the construct of the team, you have to be a good leader, all that kind of stuff, or else the math gets really small for you really quickly, because just NBA teams don't like these scoring guards anymore unless you are, everything that a team wants. All of those things I mentioned, can play defense, is efficient, all that good stuff. So we will see, but there's a real concern, I think is fair, if you're Keontae George right now or a Keontae George fan, that maybe it's not, if Colin Sexton can be traded for negative value, what does that say about where Keontae's place is in the NBA?
I agree that it's Keontae. Do you have any insight on how they view him? I mean, I have my own opinions and have ever since he started getting time as a rookie. But do you have any insight as far as front office coaching staff, the real deal on how they view Keontae George?
There's been so much energy put into his development. I think Will Hardy thinks about it all the time. I think he said in press conferences, like, they text maybe more often than any other, like, player coach duo. Than Will texts him more than anybody. Like, they are, they have put a ton of developmental resources into Keontae. And so, and because I do think, like, from that rookie class originally, like, from Summer League on, he was the player that pops the most, right? And they gave him the starting spot in year 2. I think I think they have been sometimes disappointed on the returns there, right? Like, hey, we are putting all this emotional energy into you, all this time and effort into making you a better player, with not a lot of improvement from year 2 to year 1, if I'm honest. So that means year 3 is really important. Now, I would say that, like, they feel he's doing the right things this offseason, right? Like, they feel like he's in the working out with coaches and kind of with the rest of the young guys, making good choices, making good developmental decisions there. But then, at some point, it also just does come down to what do you bring on an NBA floor. And we'll see that come October. But, yeah, I think that is a real question is, I think they are concerned about it. I think that's fair to say.
If the Jazz called you and said, Andy, when you go on Spence's show today, I want you to say the most exciting possible thing that you can to our fan base about why they should watch and why they should come to games this year, what would you say?
Oh, it's Ace Bailey, right? Like, Ace Bailey has by far the most athleticism on the team, by far the most, like, scoring, like, potential. We'll see what it ends up being, but can hit shots that no one else on this roster can do. I think has just all around potential more than anyone else on this roster. And so if you're a Jazz fan, like, that's what you're watching the season for is Ace Bailey part of the next good Jazz team? Is he not only just part of the next good Jazz team, is he an all-star? Is he maybe an all-NBA player, right? Like, that was what he was pitched as a high school prospect. I think disappointed a little bit last year at Rutgers, but still, like, the potential is undoubtedly there. And so, again, as you're looking towards what might be in the future, like, Ace is the first really legitimate star prospect I think that the Jazz have. And, I think it's fair to have concerns about him, and we'll see where it turns out. And he's still so young, but Ace is a different level of prospect than anyone else the Jazz have on the roster.
I know that you caught up with Will recently about Ace and how he plans to use him. What did you learn? What were you able to ascertain after sitting down with Will Hardy?
Yeah, I think they want him to start as more with the ball out of his hands than in his hands, more with him coming off of screens, and then him as kind of a defensive playmaker. I think one of the things that they want to change about the defense this year, which is ranked last in the NBA over the last 2 seasons, is to be much more aggressive and much more physical on the ball. And they feel like Ace, with his length and quickness and athleticism, can be that guy. Now, he has not been that guy. He was not that guy at Rutgers and wanted the ball in his hands a decent amount and took some bad shots, right? Like, so it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of change his brain. But, like, Will hasn't said this to me about Ace in particular, but about other players. I think he finds it valuable for them to grow in kind of an off-ball complementary status and then become a star. And his link is always Kawhi Leonard, right? Who did that with the San Antonio Spurs. Started out coming off the bench, then moves into the starting lineup early in his career, really helps those Spurs teams win a championship, then become finals MVP, and then all of a sudden now you're one of the top 5 players in the league. That's what I think they see as like a very kind of healthy developmental curve. And I think they do want to see some of that from Ace Bailey, especially because there are so many questions kind of about whether or not he can do those role player things or wants to do them consistently.
You think we see him start from day one? You think Ace is in the starting lineup opening night?
I don't know. My guess would be no for the reasons I just said, but I also just do want to see him getting 35 minutes a night because I do think like he's, again, by far the most interesting part of this Jazz team. So if I were in charge of everything, like, yes, Ace Bailey would be starting, but I also think that, like, they see a lot of benefit in taking guys along slowly. But, we will see. I think also, like, health has to do with some of this. But And just frankly, how good Ace is, right? Like, we also don't really know how good Ace is right now. He may not be NBA starter caliber even on the Jazz. Like, we've only seen him in 2 summer league games, and it was kind of up and down. I would like to see him in some preseason games and have a better idea of what he can bring right now before I put him in the starting lineup.
You know, once upon a time, and I'm not bringing this up as a criticism, it's just once upon a time, a lot of the players just lived here year-round and trained here year-round. And it's not a trade that's unique to the Jazz or Salt Lake. There are plenty of players that don't live full-time in the city they play. It's just completely dependent on the player, family situation, etc. But during the offseason, what's your understanding about how often the guys are here, or where else do they go to train? You know, what's that calendar / schedule kind of look like, generally speaking, for the players?
Yeah, honestly, for the young guys, and those are the ones I'm maybe more interested in than you know, the older veterans on the roster that can be moved, a KJ Martin or whatever. The younger guys have been here for most of the summer. They have been like running around West High School and at Zions Bank basketball campus doing like 1 or 2 practices a day. They have been, and when I say young players, I mean like Taylor Hendricks and Bryce Sensabaugh and Cody Williams and Keontae, and you know, you kind of go down the list. Those guys, by all accounts, have been as kind of engaged as the coaching staff wants them to be, which I think is extremely engaged. And yes, here in Utah. Lauri Markkanen is sometimes here and, you know, very often in Finland during the summer. Obviously now he's with the Finnish national team. You know, Colin and John Collins and Colin Sexton traded. Jordan Clarkson was waived. I'm trying to think like who else I care about where they are. I just think that like more, I think actually given where the Jazz are record wise, and to have the young players consistently here, like I'll give you an example. Jared Butler did not hang out in Utah very much during his, you know, 2 early seasons with the Jazz. And it did kind of frustrate Jazz coaches a little bit because they wanted to work with him rather than he work with his own coaches. And I think that was part of why ultimately they chose to move on from him. Now, like, I think these guys are doing much more of kind of what they want, and Will Hardy's, I think, created a relatively good environment on, you know, getting all those guys together in the same gym and working out together.
So it'll be another year where throughout the course of our NBA / Jazz coverage, we'll be talking about college players, just like we were a year ago with Ace, obviously Cooper Flagg. Have you done any digging on the Darren Peterson kid? Obviously, BYU is going to have AJ down there, Cam Boozer. You know, I think those are the 3 main pieces that people are the most excited about. Do you have a preference of any of those 3, or is it way too early to even get into that?
No, I don't think it's too early. And I think, you know, if you talk around the prospect world, guys are already talking about this now. I think so I watched both AJ and Darren Peterson play up at Highland High School. They had a tournament up here and didn't play against each other, but played in separate games, and so was able to watch those guys up close. I've watched a good amount of tape on Cam Boozer, like, who's just been a prospect for so long. My guy right now of the 3 would probably be AJ DeBonsa, and I like the athleticism, I like the height, I like the size, I like the defensive efforts he makes, like to fly around the floor in a way that I don't know that I see from Darren and Cameron as often. You know, the typical Boozer comparison is like Paolo Banchero, who famously is not a archetype of player that I love. Whereas I think AJ can be like a game kind of defining, changing 2-way wing. The Darren Peterson comparison is something like bigger, more polished Brandon Roy, who, you know, was one of the best guards of the mid-2000s before he got hurt. All 3 of these guys are awesome prospects, are just as good as Cooper Flagg as prospects. I think, like, that's what's kind of exciting if you are a Jazz fan, is maybe not what happens next year, but the prospect of adding one of those 3 guys and even like a Nate Amant below them, like, could be really, really cool. So, yeah, like I would recommend going on YouTube and watching those guys, because you'll kind of immediately see how much they pop and how much, frankly, if you put them on the Utah Jazz right now, today, while they're 17 and 18 years old, they would be able to add things right now. They are that good.
Last thing, I'll set you loose. I was asked this over the weekend by some buddies that I was with. I'm going to ask you the same. When are they going to be good? Like, honestly speaking, when do you think they're going to be even good, kind of good?
Yeah, okay. So, like, let's say, you've got Ace Bailey rookie year. Let's say you do add one of those three guys next year. So that's a 2026-27 season. You probably need the Donovan Mitchell path where you're just in the playoffs and interesting your rookie year is not very common. You probably want to expect 2 or 3 or even 4 years after that. So, yeah, we're looking at 2029, 2030, and that is forever away, and that is tough, especially if you are a Utah Jazz beat writer. But I do think, like, it becomes more interesting from here on out, where, like, I don't think this season will be super interesting because you only have one guy. You've got Ace, and then, Lowry and Walker are just kind of hanging around. You know what they are as players. But you add in an AJ DeBonster, you add in a Darren Peterson, you add in maybe one of these 6, guys, rookies and sophomores they have, I guess sophomores and third-year players now, to the mix. And all of a sudden, now you're maybe more competitive in games. You have something to offer. You're a little bit more tough defensively. It just becomes much more watchable and interesting than it has been last year, and I think probably this year will be too.
Oh, dear. All right, man. Well, appreciate the time on a Monday, Andy. Be good, and we'll chat soon, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks, man.
Andy Larson, Salt Lake Tribune, covers the Jazz. He's been doing some Utah football, too, so he'll help out the Triv in a number of different ways, as it is the deadest of dead times in the NBA calendar right now, mostly football-centric. We'll get back to college football for the final hour of the show, which comes your way next on a Monday edition of The Drive. It's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. All right, let's get it. Drive at 5 time, Monday afternoon style, about 8 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. Happy Monday to you. Hope you had a great weekend. Off to a great start to that work week. It's a nice day. It's about 84 degrees, a little cloudy here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. We're going to have a little bit of rain over the next couple of days, and it'll be very nice this weekend for college football. We are 5 days away. You made it, guys. You did it. You've been waiting all year. 5 days away from Utah football, Utah UCLA. 5 days away from BYU Portland State. The Bronco Mendenhall era begins in Logan with a game against UTEP. All 6 of our D1 teams in action coming up this weekend. After a week 0 slate that was okay, we've talked a bit about the Iowa State K-State game in Dublin. Farmageddon that saw Iowa State get that win with a couple of big-time fourth down conversions. Pretty sloppy game, and I guess that's to be expected. And you have to wonder whether or not that's going to kind of be the norm now with just a ton of changeover. Every year the sport has changeover, but unprecedented changeover, obviously, over the past 3-4 years since the transfer portal became such a thing. So sloppy game. Iowa State gets the win. Matt Campbell with some very aggressive play calling, which isn't necessarily his calling card. And if I'm either Matt Campbell or Chris Kleiman, I'm not very pleased with that experience. That would be my guess. A penny for their thoughts with a really, really bad field. Inclement weather caused the field to look even worse. They were not prepared for college football over there. And you have to wonder how those coaches are feeling about it. But a busy, busy week ahead prior to Utah football taking on UCLA. And it has been a drama-free camp. Final week at Camp Kyle here, week 4 of Camp Kyle. With a few positional battles, but nothing really of note. As we've discussed throughout the course of camp, no news is good news. No drama is obviously a good thing for a program that has had a rough couple years, not just last year, but the year before. I mean, getting that team to 8 wins was one of Kyle's best coaching jobs, as I said before. So just hoping for full health, hoping for a successful trip to the Rose Bowl. Been asking guests over the past week or so what success looks like for Utah football. Week 1 against UCLA. 6.5-point favorite, and that line's been pretty steady, and that feels about right. We had Stevenson Sylvester on earlier, and I was asking Sly what his expectation is for the offense against a UCLA defense that, according to Pro Football Focus, lost 8 of their top 10 most impactful defensive players. It's a brand-new O-line with 3 transfers. UCLA, a brand-new running back, a transfer from Cal. It's a brand new team all the way across the board. And if you guys have been doing any reading about kind of this matchup or expectations for UCLA, you are hard-pressed to find anybody who's very bullish on the Bruins' ability to win very many football games this year. The Vegas line is 5.5. So barely might even be a bowl team. Feels like a good landing spot for Utah. Coach Witt addressed the media earlier today. If you missed that, it's on our website. We also played it on the show, as we do every single Monday. So we play that after Kyle addresses the media, then try to kind of learn a few things here or there. And Coach Witt said he prefers kind of an easier opening opponent, and that's the opponent that BYU has, is Portland State. We lost to Tarleton State 42-0 over the weekend at home. They couldn't score. They couldn't move the ball. They had a couple of field goals that they almost made, but it would have been 42-3 or 6. So BYU... And I think if you're a BYU fan, you actually don't mind the dynamic because Bear is so young as a freshman. A-Rod addressed the media last week. 14 practices. Bear's been with BYU for 14 practices, and that was enough to win the job. Of course, not with BYU during spring ball, where he was at Stanford. They, coincidentally enough, played Stanford with their second game. Stanford lost to Hawaii and didn't look good. BYU's non-con, I would be a little bit concerned as a BYU fan for that non-conference schedule to prepare you for conference play. And the old adage and the old question in the Big 12 is it a bunch of good teams that beat up on each other or a bunch of average teams that beat up on each other? The CFP committee did not have a lot of respect for the Big 12 last year. Only Arizona State getting in, of course, as conference champs, and they were lowly seeded. So we'll kind of see how it plays out. On Thursday, Boise State hosts South Florida, so we get some college football starting on Thursday. We're 10 days away from the start of the NFL. And earlier today, news broke that Amari Cooper is on his way to play for the Raiders. So he'll be back with Geno Smith there. One of the big question marks has been the Trey Hendrickson holdout in Cincinnati. That is over. The star pass rusher is going to get a $14 million raise from the Bengals for this season, boosting his salary to $30 million. So it is only a one-year deal, so they might dance this dance again next year unless they move off of him. But obviously one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Warren got a new deal. So he was another holdout, and that is over. No word on the Micah Parsons Dallas Cowboys situation. Some numbers were leaked last week about a contract he was offered. They would have made him the highest paid non-quarterback in pro football, but those two are continue to be at a standstill. Fantasy football time of year, NFL time of year, college football time of year, obviously a lot of fun as fall is approaching. Chatted with Andy Larson for a few minutes earlier today, did a little RSL and a little Utah Jazz. It is the deadest of dead times in the world of pro basketball. RSL is now 4 points out of the play-in game with 7 matches to play. They're going to get a couple of weeks off because the Seattle game was rescheduled. So if you missed Andy, definitely check out the website. Josh Furlong joined us earlier on to talk about Utah, UCLA, and the final week of training camp for Coach Witt. So a bunch of good sound up on the website if you are looking for it. I'll tell you about my friends at Advanced Window Products. Nate Orchard, mayor of Sac Lake City, his buddy Jake Weber. They run a local company. They've been here forever. They're here to serve the community. Incredible reputation. If you're in the market for new windows, there's no reason to even call anybody else because you'll get the best price from Advanced Window Products. They build, install, and guarantee for life. They've got transferable lifetime warranties and guarantees. And, you know, weather's still a little warm right now. If your house is hot, you probably need new windows. And once the weather turns, if it's too cold and you're jacking up the heater, you're probably hemorrhaging money on your power bill. So get it done with Advanced Window Products. And if you call them today, regardless if you want to make the switch today, just get on their schedule and you're going to take advantage of their fall football special where you save $2,500 when you buy 10 windows or more. So give them a call. Our friends at Advanced Window Products at 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, 801-850-9100. You can also visit them online at advancedwindows.com. We'll catch you quick. program today. Happy Monday to you. Hopefully you had a great weekend or off to a great start to that work week. Might have a little extra pep in your step. Utah football is back in 5 days. College football back over the weekend with a week 0 tilt and a week 0 slate. So week 1 officially gets rolling on Thursday. And then, of course, throughout the weekend, we are 10 days away from the start of the NFL as well. So pro football right around the corner. All right, Porter, you've had 4 hours to ponder the question I dumped on you to start the show today. Had an interesting hypothetical conversation with a friend over the weekend, and she asked me if somebody was to bankroll your life and you could go chase an endeavor, you could go do whatever, you could go try to become a pianist or something, you could go start a band. My answer, it was very immediate. I said, in 3 years, I'm old enough to qualify for the Champions Tour and be a professional golfer. So
which is awesome, by the way.
I think that, yeah.
Congrats.
At 50 years old, hey, man, I'm knocking on the door. I am closer to 50 than I am to 40. So the timeline we said was, okay, you have 5 years to do this. 5 years to chase whatever you want. Money's not an issue. Your bills are paid. Food's on the table. You got a car. You got a house. You do not have to earn $1 for 5 years. You can go chase whatever you want to chase. Mine was the golfing stuff. Have you come? I believe initially you said you would want to train horses, which is great if that's the deal. Have you come to a different conclusion?
I don't think so. I might be doing that. I might be like doing horse racing and doing the high dollar horse thing.
Really?
I think so. We'll see.
Is this breaking news, or have you been working on this for a while?
No, I mean, again, I love horses, but that style of it, like the high class era of it, is like 6 figures sometimes. You're talking for a 4-legged animal. So, you need a bankroller sometimes.
Yeah, no, and that's the point of the exercise.
You'll see me at Kentucky Downs.
I would love that. You can do whatever you want for 5 years without having to earn $1. What would you do? My golf addiction made that answer for me rather easily. Played some mediocre golf over the weekend. I took a golf lesson last week.
You told me about that.
Yeah, and so and my guy B. Metz, we'll get him on the show. Good dude, really smart guy when it comes to the game. We made 2 or 3 more adjustments to the swing, and so trying to bring that onto the course this weekend caused a little frustration.
I was going to say, you can't, especially when you're like adjusting or calculating, you can't get too frustrated because it takes time. It's all about the reps with golf. If you're changing something up, it's like trying to change a jump shot. It's not going to work first time. You'll need some practice at it.
Yeah, no doubt. So his whole thing is like, you swing the golf club like an athlete. We need to get you to swing it like a golfer.
So slow down.
Among other things.
Yeah.
You don't realize until you actually learn how to swing a golf club and you actually take lessons from a pro, you don't realize how many intricate things there are that are involved. It's why playing, you just have to take swing thoughts out of your mind. Otherwise, you'll go crazy. There's like 20 different things you have to do.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. The mechanics of a swing are far more complicated than you think. It looks easy because the guys that are good at it make it look really easy and really smooth. But in order to get a swing like that, with the rotation, with the timing, it's not easy, man. So. Good luck with that. It'll come.
One step at a time. And who knows, maybe in 5 years I'll be on the Champions Tour.
Maybe. I know a guy.
You do? Oh, Mark.
Yeah.
Can we please get him on the show? You know Mark O'Meara, and he does not join the radio show.
I know. I got him on the show once with Bill, and then he was like, and maybe it's not an indictment on Bill, I don't think.
Sounds like it.
But I don't know if radio's really his thing. I'll try. I'll keep trying.
Yeah, you know what? Like, I don't blame anybody. Like, he doesn't need to do this.
I was gonna say, if I won a Masters and didn't have to work for an income, respectfully, Spence might not be on AM radio too often.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I'll join you every once in a while, though.
Fair enough. All right, before we say goodnight, I only met Caroline Klein a couple different times. I did not get to know her. I was long gone with the Jazz when she was hired to be the SEG Chief Communication Officer. She was very nice when I met her, and it is such a sad story. She passed away over the weekend at the age of 40. A lot of my friends over there know Caroline in a way, or knew Caroline in a way that I just didn't. She released just like a heart-wrenching, heartbreaking LinkedIn post that I would encourage you to go read because it was beautiful. It had me emotional. So did not know her that well. Just wanted to say publicly how horrifically sad this whole thing is. 40 years old, passed away, complications from lung cancer. So I just wanted to give a shout out to her husband, Mike. Just wanted to mention that before we say goodnight. Porter, what comes our way on a Tuesday edition of the show?
A Tuesday edition of The Drive. Spence will continue to preview Utah and UCLA. A couple of former Utes. Chase Hansen joins the program on a Tuesday. Scott Mitchell joins the show. Of course, Scott will be on the color call on Saturday at the Rose Bowl. Josh Lewin will be on the broadcast at the Rose Bowl as well, but for those other guys. So we'll get a scout of the UCLA Bruins with their play-by-play man, and we'll go from there.
All right, there you go. So join us for a Tuesday show. We will be 4 days away from game day. Can't believe it's here, but it is game week. College football is officially back. Special thank you today to Stevenson Sylvester, Josh Furlong, Bill Riley, and Andy Larson. We also played Coach Witt's press conference if you missed any of the sound. Website is ESPN700sports.com. Download our mobile app and take us on the go. That ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. Then for what we do in our space, specifically every day for 4 hours, check out and become a supporter of our podcast page. Our podcast is called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your shows. So subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments, and give us all the stars you can. It does help. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Monday evening. We'll talk to you on a Tuesday edition of the show. And as always, you can catch that right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN Radio Network.